Re-Zero, Side Story, Loving the Days Gone By Starting From Zero, Prologue, First Cry.
The moment she opened her eyes, what first dawned upon her was the doubt of what thing herself was. Enigmatically, she possessed knowledge. If she were to define it, then she was currently in a state wherein simply the receptacle for the soul had been prepared. In order to initiate something, the receptacle plastered with foundation for knowledge and skills had been prepared, lacking only its pivotal content. No, it had finally been inserted was what the condition was. If she thought of being able to start walking, she could have walked. If she thought of being able to start talking, she could have talked. However, the will that sought to perform those inevitabilities was also insufficient, and for that reason she was unable to move. A room which had the impression of being queerly empty, with circles drawn on the ground glowing fleetingly. She understood it was a pattern for some kind of magic-esque technique, but she was ignorant as to what it specifically was. The reason why herself was at the center of this light was because herself had taken birth here. Herself, who was yet to be something, had been born, and without even voicing a first cry, was examining the state of her surroundings. Straining her eyes in the dim indoors, what she could see were books tightly packed in shelves, and many kinds of materials scattered on the floor. Affirming those, she finally took notice of the shadow staring down towards herself, as she stood within the light. Long, white hair, such transient beauty that would seemingly crumble upon a single touch. The lady, garbed in black clothing running contrary to the impression of her hair, stood there wielding a definite aura of presence. Why was she not livened up by a person so beautiful and bewitching? The reason was obvious. Just as light far too powerful could not be imagined, she had merely overlooked what was too great. That was not anything so outwardly as her presence or her shimmering beauty, but that she was something meaning greatly to herself, who was yet to be something. That she was someone irreplaceable to herself, who was not anything. Her lips tried to vocalize something, trembling weakly, they spilled out a sigh. The embankment was destroyed at once, the collapse thereafter perceptible immediately. R-A-H. A-A-H. Voice impossible of being vocalized overflowed, something warm trickled down from the corner of her eyes. She possessed no means to hold her voice, hold her tears. That which spilled out, that which trickled out, was the supernatant of the soul, impossible of being contained within this receptacle. Shedding them in their entirety, finally, the soul matched oneself with the receptacle. With this, at last, it shall all commence. At last, herself, who was not anything, herself, who had emitted her first cry, shall. Good morning. Suddenly, a voice that was not her own resonated, and raising her trembling chin, she lifted her gaze. A blurred field of vision, the form of that person that had been vividly visible till earlier was no longer visible, and frantically rubbing her eyes, she searched for the figure of that person. You are Beatrice, the voice told her, as a hand supported the cheek of the lost child. Holding her breath, she gazed at the beauty before her eyes. That person curved her lips in somewhat perturbation. With a delay, she realized it was a smile coming from this gauche person. You are my, let's see. Something akin to a daughter.
Loving the Days Gone By Starting From Zero, Chapter 1, Chased by the Spherical Moon.
Beatrice Summer, how did you formerly lead your life? The nonchalant question hurled at her, Beatrice slowly lifted her face. This had been just about the time of awaiting supper, as she sat in front of the fire with an open book on her lap. Before her eyes, putting the hot pot on the fire, was the one spending identical time on this land, Lewis, a rare half-elf. The young girl conferred with an indispensable duty in the sanctuary. Nowadays, Beatrice had been frequently acting together with her and spending time together. This being per ordinary, they had been leisurely spending time of boredom together. Beatrice, what is it that you intend, I suppose? Lewis, Was that a strange question on my part? Beatrice, it's not about being strange, in fact. Simply, for you to probe into Betty, just what are you plotting, I suppose? Confess with honesty, and you shall be let off without facing much. In fact, Lewis, for me to be plotting something, that is out of the question. Holding the spoon for stirring the hot pot close to her chest, with long pink-hued hair, Lewis acted ashamed. A young girl unsuited to secrets. She was docile when facing Beatrice as well, and the latter wanted to trust her when she said she was not plotting anything, but she shan't let her guard down. Beatrice, at any rate, Roswell would stoop to any level if it is for teasing Betty, I suppose. Lewis, so you were concerned about that. Beatrice, that reaction. Your face says you happen to know something. In fact, she pointed a finger at Lewis, who seemed to consent, displaying a bitter smile. Afterwards, Lewis said it's a misunderstanding and put the spoon back into the hot pot. Lewis, just now, I simply thought that I certainly agree with Beatrice Summer's thoughts. Because it seems Roswell Summer finds Beatrice Summer to be so cute that he just cannot help it. Beatrice, what a mistaken idea, I suppose. You are also blind to an astounding degree, in fact. He is just nasty, that is all, I suppose. Lewis, is that so? I believe Roswell Summer thinks of Beatrice Summer as his younger sister. Beatrice, don't say anything so repulsive. In fact, the book interposed in her lap. Beatrice grasped her slim shoulders as she felt shivers run through her body. Lewis' poor vision was also grievous. For her to say Beatrice and Roswell were siblings. Beatrice, to begin with, Betty does have a more proper sibling. Bubby, I suppose. If Bubby were also to be considered in furriness and cuteness, something like Roswell wouldn't even stand a chance. In fact, Lewis, Bubby. Elder brother, you mean? Beatrice Summers? In other words, Echidna Summers. Beatrice, things are a little bit complicated when it comes to that detail, I suppose. Lewis' question, as she rounded her eyes, likely alluded to whether Beatrice's elder brother was also Echidna's child. In other words, if they were true siblings. In that sense, realizing a sibling relationship with a spirit's disposition was difficult. However, in the sense of being born through the same technique and to the same parent, Beatrice indeed had an elder brother. Beatrice, that is, Betty's precious Bubby, I suppose. Lewis, what kind of a person is he? Please tell me as well. Beatrice, MGH, her eyes twinkling, keenly interested, Lewis implored Beatrice. This gaze of Lewis was Beatrice's weakness. Above all, Beatrice being weak to gazes of this kind was not limited to Lewis alone. Beatrice, geez, what a hopeless girl, I suppose. Such insolence, in fact. Lewis, well then, Beatrice, before that. Be careful of the hot pot's flame, I suppose. If you become engrossed in listening and burn the supper, then it will be a problem to Mother. In fact, the dinner Lewis was preparing was to be given out to people involved with the sanctuary as a feast. Lewis' cooking was actually the most delicious in this settlement. Everyone has their specialties. Those spirits were not required to eat meals, they could comprehend taste, and could also reduce mana into food. In secret, Beatrice had also been looking forward to the supper Lewis would make. Beatrice, so, don't burn it, I suppose. Lewis, I understand. Well then, what story are you going to let me hear? Beatrice, how self-serving, in fact. If that's the case, then Betty will tell you about a while back, I suppose, a tale coming from the topic of her elder brother. If so, Beatrice shall talk about the days she spent with her elder brother, back when the sanctuary had not been created yet, and she had not even met Roswell, the time Beatrice had lived through, having been born as the daughter of the witch, alongside her solitary elder brother, and the reason why Beatrice became such that she would look forward to suppers, like humans. A short glance at Lewis, whose eyes were twinkling and cheeks dyed red in anticipation, and Beatrice sighed. Beatrice, that was, back when Betty had been entrusted with the house during Mother's absence. In fact, ? Oh, she raised her voice and crouched down upon the impact that landed on the top of her head. What had directly hit the area of the whirls of hair on the rear of her head was a single book that fell as she was pulling it out. The indolence behind her claim of being able to obtain it from the upper row of the bookshelf without a stepladder gave rise to calamity, and as she stood on her tiptoes stretching for above, she ultimately had to catch the book which slipped through her fingers with her head. ? What a disaster, I suppose. How audacious for a mere book. In fact, the book was quite a large one by itself, its impact had been nothing short of hefty. But, to admit that would mark the further increase of her own miserableness, the girl sourly refused to admit defeat before the book lying on the floor. Above all, The faint tears accumulated in those large eyes of hers lost her of any convincibility. She was a young girl in possession of characteristic eyes of a bluish tint and symbolic patterns resembling butterflies visible on them. Big, round eyes along with prickly, unruffled, well-ordered facial features, possessing a face and figure of approximately 10 years of age. The young child who gave the impression that she shall become a charming beauty in the future was garbed in an extravagant dress. Her pale-hued hair carefully rolled, the girl's figure was as though a princess from a picture book. Geez, you may be a book, but you lack the self-awareness of being mother's property, I suppose. That is why you brought this chaos upon Betty. In fact, the sweet albeit young girl picked the fallen book up and cleared away the dust on its binding whilst making excuses that went unheard by anyone. The book was one with black binding, with no title on its cover. Its contents were unknown at a glance, but when the young girl put her fingers, which she had cleared the dust on the cover away with, and contemplated, a faint light gave rise to letters. It was the book's title. Simply Mana 1 was written on it, ? Letters written with dregs of mana. Though it is for the purpose of not being able to be read by those who do not have aptitude for mana, mother's watchfulness is per expectation, I suppose. Murmuring thoughts bristling with reverence, the girl opened the bulky book. Though within it were nothing but blank pages, letters appeared on them upon contemplation identical to how they had on the cover. Magical books that could only be read by those who could utilize mana were plentifully lined up in the shelf before her eyes. In the infinite number of bookshelves that comprised the young girl's environs, a library packed with magical books of such nature, to those with no groundings, they were worthless blank books. Contrariwise, it was a mountain of treasure possessing inestimable worth for those qualified. The young girl harbored pride in having been given the right to freely enter and exit this library. Just how many humans across the world would thirst for the key to this treasury of knowledge? A sense of supremacy for having been bestowed with what could not be gained with ease, even upon wishing for it. However, it was simply natural she would be the object to this favorable treatment. For the young girl was, ? The one and only daughter of the Great Mother. In fact, ? Oh, in the midst of studying, are you, Betty? ? As she puffed up her chest out of slight self-regard, the young girl's shoulders sprung in astonishment upon hearing the voice. The book dropped from her hands once again, this time striking her tiptoes. Shouting Yukia, the young girl reflexively crouched on the spot. ? Betty, I'm sorry. All because I called out to you out of nowhere. ? It doesn't hurt, I suppose. HK? ? You sure are a strong girl. Now, show me your foot. Tightly gnashing her molars, the young girl braved the pain. What gently descended whilst fluttering right before her eyes was a kitten of grey-colored fur levitating in the air. The kitten lengthened its tail but was around the same length as its body and softly pointed its end towards the young girl's hurting tiptoes. And a pale light was emitted, its warmth gradually healed her pain. ? No pain go away. Why? Did it go away? ? It's gone away, in fact. Thank you, I suppose. ? All 'cause I surprised you, after all. Doing this much is a matter of course. The kitten accepted her gratitude with an affluent smile whilst putting a hand on its waist. Holding the fallen book in her arms once again, the girl stood up and looked into the eyes of the kitten. Of a size enough to sit on a palm and capable of comprehending human speech was the kitten. It was not precisely a kitten. To the utmost, its shape and form merely resembled a lovable cat. Its true state was that of a further exalted being, a spirit living by using mana, the primal power swaying across this world, as a source of energy was what the kitten was. But for the young girl, there existed a further appropriate name for it. ? For pity's sake, Bobby Shaw is an oversleeper. In fact, it's already past noon, I suppose. ? Sorry. I accidentally got too much at ease. See, I resemble a cat, right? So, I fail to resist the instinct of wanting to laze around when I find a nice, sunny spot. The girl referred to the mischievously grinning kitten as Bubby, big brother. An outsider may observe the kitten and the girl refer to each other in an odd fashion, but there was nothing uncanny about it. The young girl and the kitten were a recherché set of siblings born in the same manner, for they were fellow artificial spirits, beings of paramount eternity, albeit born from human hands. The girl's name was Beatrice, the kitten's name was Puck. This was the identity of the siblings, who directed deep affection mutually toward each other despite completely unalike shape and form. Puck, I must say, Betty sure has a zeal for studying. Reading in the library again, are you? Glancing at the book Beatrice was carrying by her chest, Puck tilted his neck whilst gently brushing his whiskers. Subject to his gaze, Beatrice nodded in assent with a yes. In fact, Beatrice, in order to gain knowledge befitting of what mother's daughter should suitably have, Betty is diligently devoting herself to studies. Puck, whoa, very fine. But is it really needed? Though both Betty and I, spirits born with a bunch of procedures omitted, Mana's usage is something instinctive, right? Articulating, Puck raised both of his tiny hands, and ahead of his physical body generated a red and a blue light. Each of the lights were conceived with fire and water mana respectively, but for Puck, who happened to be a great spirit, this was as natural an ability as swaying his tail. Of course, Beatrice was capable of the same as well, though she was capable. Beatrice, doing it per sensation and augmenting it with proper knowledge is different. In fact, Bubby, you and Betty are capable of it. But that alone won't suffice, I suppose. Puck, well, you sure are a stern one, Betty. But why? Beatrice, Betty being mother's daughter, and presently acting as proxy for the proprietor of this palace of knowledge, are also factors that play into it. In fact, stretching her dorsal muscles firmly, Beatrice inlaid strength into her chest with which she was carrying the book. A mountain of books submerged in countless bookshelves, contained therein a vast expanse of knowledge yearning to yet unable to change the world. Suitable of being named as prescribed knowledge forbidden from being hauled outside by anyone. The true proprietor of this palace, Beatrice's mother, was even capable of memorizing it all. However, Beatrice did not possess that extent of ability yet. But now that she had been entrusted in place of her mother, she must compensate with everything within the grasp of her effort. Beatrice, for that, Betty is studying every day, I suppose. Puck, how praiseworthy. Though, it must be tough. I mean, the title of that book is also Mana 1, right? The other book is also. Articulating so, Puck pulled out a random book out of the bookshelf. With Mana concentrating on it, appeared on its front cover the title Earth 4, truly simple and concise. The book likely had information about Earth written within, and had no further information included. That was a problem not present in this book alone, but shared amongst almost all of the magical books submerging the bookshelves. Puck, it's her bad habit. From the onset, she must be thinking only about reading and writing it herself, hence that it'd be fine as long as she alone understands it. The way the books have been arranged is a total mess as well. Beatrice, mother has her profound intents, in fact, Bubby. It'd be impolite to speak that way, I suppose. Even if it's Bubby, Betty will get furious. In fact, Puck, you definitely are praiseworthy. Puck crossed his short arms watching Beatrice pout. Her cheek pressed by his long tail, Beatrice lowered her eyebrows as her pouting cheeks deflated. Whatever she may have told Puck, Beatrice was greatly perplexed by the abstruse nature of the reading material as well. Just as Puck had remarked, the proprietor of this palace was the proprietor of genius beyond the attainability of human intellect, and was moving per a peculiar principle that could never be comprehended by others. The book's arrangement was in identical state, making even Beatrice face hardship in finding the book of her choice. Truth be told, Mana 1, which she was holding at present, was not the book of her desire either. Though it seemed interesting by itself and she wished to memorize its content via sedulous reading. Puck, some books have the same title at times, the numbering is all slipshod too, yeah. There's also the writing of memos on the back, procrastinating summarizing them all together, keeping organizing them for another day. Beatrice, Betty wants to hurry up, and become such that she can apprehend mother's ideas as well, I suppose. Puck, I just think it's simply sloppy. Beatrice, Bubby, as Beatrice pouted her lips, the kitten spoke got it and proceeded to levitate further upward. Then suddenly, Puck said, "What's this?" As his black eyes darted towards the room's window, Puck, Betty, seems like a visitor is here. Pretty brave of him, to make his way to this mansion. Beatrice, Oh no, in fact. Must prepare for the reception, I suppose. Jumping next to Puck as he gazed outside, she affirmed movement of the main gate of Beatrice's palace. The shadow, passing through the main gate whilst bewildered, was one with the qualification, having surmounted the multiple barriers for reaching this palace at present during her mother's absence, it was Beatrice's duty to welcome them. Beatrice, Bobby. Betty is going to go, in fact. The conversation resumes sometime later, I suppose. Puck, whoopsie, cramming the book she was holding into a bookshelf within her reach, Beatrice's dress fluttered as she broke into a sprint. Giving a send-off to the acutely panicking back, Puck proceeded to caress his whiskers. Puck, it sure feels like she takes right after her mother when it comes to this casually unorganized nature. Having rushed out of the library leaving these impressions of Puck's behind, Beatrice headed towards the entry hall. Subsequently reaching the position immediately before, she adjusted her dress and hair, perfecting her personal appearance. Beatrice, well then, about time, this is Betty's duty, I suppose, she told herself before stretching her hand ahead. Receiving her actions, the palace's entrance, the dual grand doors automatically opened gradually. Cold wind conceived with the aroma of a clear sky wafted in. Accompanying the wind and sun rays descending from zenith, the red-haired youth peeked into the palace through his astonishment. Seeing his pupils frozen over in awe and nervousness, Beatrice contently straightened her eyes. Beatrice, commendation for making thy way here. In mother's stead, thy visit shall be welcomed, hero, I suppose. Focusing on the opponent owning an astonished expression, with ample dignity at the very least, seeking to appear with ample dignity by her perspective, Beatrice declared calmly. The hero who had paid a call to the palace of the witch, was far too exceedingly thrilled by this reception to even swallow his breath. In this world existed beings having conceived special strength, regardless congenital or acquired. All of them manifested odd talents improbable of being recreated by ordinary individuals, superhumans who interfered with the principles of this world. Even amongst them, the existences who possessed might that projected the brinks of humankind, isolated superior beings that let none other come close, people called those as the witches, absolute personages who overcame the reason and principles of the human world, unbound by common sense, making no considerations for others. Hence, all feared, dreaded, shunned the witches. That was the ordinary state of affairs, and the common cognizance pertaining to the absolute beings named as the witches. Beatrice, however, mother is the solitary exception to that. In fact, taking pride as though a matter of her own, Beatrice put her hand on her puffed slim chest. Beatrice, mother possesses a profoundly compassionate, magnanimous and honorable heart, I suppose. Hence, whilst wielding the most excelling power in this world, she is not troubled by actuating it for the benefit of others. In fact, you all are also to firmly engrave that in your minds, I suppose. Beatrice, engrave that in your mind, in fact, you understood. I'll engrave it in my mind, I'll engrave it in my mind. The deferential youth's shoulders bounced upon her pressurizing gaze. His grateful conduct made Beatrice nod, satisfied. This place was the palace's parlor, where visitors received at the entry hall were shown around and made to have a seat. Above all, the conduct of the visitor seated on the sofa lacked all composure. That was per-natural, remaining calm when taken into the palace of the witch would be the abnormality. Seeing fright toward that which personified was pleasant to Beatrice. Beatrice, it is correct to regard the name of the Great Mother as exalted and noble, I suppose. That is a matter of course. After all, the Witch of Wisdom Summer's name is renowned. Beatrice, yes. Yes, in fact. You certainly get it, I suppose. Will compliment you for that. In fact, hearing greater admiration for her mother, Beatrice caressed the person's head as her mood progressively became genial. The youth rounded his eyes upon her actions, as she peered into his blue eyes. Beatrice, so? Having reached the Great Mother's, the Witch of Wisdom's palace, what is that you want to ask, I suppose? What compelled you to approach the barriers of the witch, in fact? barrier you say, that's, Beatrice, an exaggeration, you mean to say. To make it clear, this is no place one can just easily come to when he wants, I suppose. A mighty wish that would seemingly scorch your heart, that is what made you reach here, in fact. Speaking so, Beatrice pointed towards the exterior of the window, the vast, extensive, entirely uninterrupted landscape. Though this was a remote location distant from human habitation, it was not merely some random remote location, the summit of a tall, lofty mountain that verbatim pierced above the clouds. The ground underneath, impossible to be viewed due to the obstruction of the thick clouds, was populated by a dense, vast forest, and rich mana that could not be compared with any other land made nature grow to abnormal degrees. This derailed sense of direction, the forest at times freely altered its shape and form, a naturally strategic position which humans were not allowed to enter with ease. Ahead of this rigorous environment lay this palace of the witch, a resilient body that could travel by foot through the extensive, mighty forest, judgment that could overcome all kinds of obstacles interwoven by nature, a heart that would not get exhausted midway through the course, and the serendipity of time. With a concurrence of all of these, the qualification to finally reach this palace could be said to have been acquired. Beatrice, however, though it is important to have the mind and body remain strong at once, there is something more important than that, I suppose, ? That being, the wish, Beatrice, in fact. You must also have an idea, I suppose, regarding the wish that made you keep advancing. In fact, if a powerful flesh body and sharp determination were the requirements for tackling this forest, then a mighty wish that would seemingly scorch one's body was precisely the condition for reaching this witch's palace. Both of these prerequisites had been satisfied. The youth, gaze cast downward and searching for words, was only about 15 to 16 years old. Age that indubitably constituted him as a young boy. On top of that, rough clothes with a satchel of fur, his old-fashioned tawdry sword and equipment were also meager. It could be told from his responses alone that he was abound in knowledge unsuitable for his age, and also possible to sense he was endowed with odd talents and ability rivaling the aforementioned witches. For him to have reached the palace of the witch meant, Beatrice, it means, that you do have a wish unbefitting your stature, I suppose. Mother welcomes those relying on the witch for fulfilling such wishes unsuited to their vessel, in fact, ? But, I have nothing that could be an offering. Beatrice, do not belittle, I suppose. To begin with, mother's deeds are not so cheap that they could be recompensed by you all, in fact, ? If that's the case, then that's all the more reason not to. The youth's face reddened upon slight provocation. Beatrice narrowed her eyes upon the befitting immaturity of the youth and took a short inhale. Mocking banal humans this way was fine, but it was about time she fulfilled her original duty, acting as proxy for the proprietor of the palace, that being, extending a hand of salvation to those who had stepped foot here in pursuit of wisdom. Beatrice, that his mother's the witch Echidna's compassion, I suppose? ? Beatrice, you shall be asked again, in fact. What is your wish? What do you desire to know? How will you respond, I suppose? There is nothing which mother does not know until the very edge of the edge of the edge of this world. In fact, spreading her arms wide declared Beatrice, as if singing. The youth unwittingly straightened his spine upon hearing her, and similarly Beatrice encouraged herself to an identical degree. Her mother presently absent, Beatrice stood as her proxy, thus it was only natural that her conduct be similar to that of her mother as well. No failure, error, blunder should happen. For certain, the youth's lips quivered a few times before Beatrice, who had abandoned her own nature. Before long he solidified his cheeks as though having cemented his thoughts, and spoke. ? Please, teach me. Away my childhood friend, won't be taken away. Beatrice. Huh? Yes. Beatrice was taken aback, dumbfounded, as the youth declared with an expression exhibiting preparedness for death. Viewing Beatrice's expression, the youth pitched forward pronouncing like I sighed D. ? I want you to teach me. A way that my childhood friend won't get snatched away.
Beatrice, wait a second, I suppose.
Betty may have misheard, in fact. You just said, a way your childhood friend won't get snatched away. ? Yes. I want to protect my childhood friend, Remina. The youth leaned forward moreover with an intimidating attitude before Beatrice started feeling dizzy. To rescue lands with crops failed due to droughts, to aid villages fallen into the predicament of frequent floods, to decontaminate grounds that stopped being approached by people due to dense mana storms, for solving such circumstances beyond human intellect the which had been relied on. To think the youth would use this opportunity for his childhood friend, an apparent subject of his affection, to not be snatched away. Beatrice, this is Betty's first task as mother's proxy, ? So on that note, where might the pivotal witch summer be? The youth timidly asked before Beatrice awakened from her dizziness due to the unforeseen circumstance. However, with a wait, I suppose Beatrice pointed her hand towards the youth. Beatrice, mother is currently absent. Thus, Betty will entertain you and grant the wisdom corresponding to your wish. Your wish? ? What might have happened? Beatrice, Betty didn't exactly devotedly read through mother's vast collection of books, for the sake of some human's love affair, I suppose, knelt down. Beatrice cursed the misfortune befallen upon herself. However, Beatrice was representing her mother. The youth before her eyes had stepped foot into this place having overcome the necessary trials. Hence, Beatrice must answer, even if this was some boundlessly worthless matter of some human's love affair. ? Now, Betty, you mustn't jump to conclusions. It is an important matter for this child, and you must properly listen to what more he has to say, you know. Beatrice, Beatrice subsequently lifted her face at the voice descending from overhead whilst she mourned for her own self. Present there was Puck, his tail in his arms, softly sprawling in the air, levitating close to the ceiling of the parlor. This entrance of Puck's made the youth holler, "Eh?" as he darted his eyes around. ? A sea cat? No, could it be a spirit? Puck, yep, I'm surprised you got it. Despite being so furry, I'm a spirit. With the permission of that mother, I'm living together with Betty. Nice to be with you? ? Pleased to be in your company? Puck pointed his tiny hand towards the baffled youth whilst gyrating and descending. Perplexed, the youth exchanged something akin to handshake by picking Puck's hand with a finger. Puck, I'll ask in place of the depressed Betty, but what's your name? Tosca. I'm Tosca. I came from a village called Karnats. Puck, I see. I'll say this, you sure are a hard worker, Tosca. Betty also spoke of the same, but this palace really is no place you can easily reach. It takes many days if you travel by foot, yeah? Tosca, I was anyhow just desperate. Puck, seems so. Remina-chan, was it? Is she someone precious to you? Puck's inquiry made the youth Tosca falter a bit, but he then proceeded to give a deep nod. Tosca, yes. Remina is my childhood friend, but that's not all. Puck, is that so? If that's the case, then I'm rooting for you. I'm an ally to maidens in love and youthful youngsters, you see. So then, what kind of a guy is your romantic rival? Like the spoiled son of a distinguished figure in the village, a greedy nobleman who's the tax collector, or if things are odd, then there's also the possibility of it being a relative. Beatrice, if a love affair is all that it is, then just run away at night or elope with her or whatever. In fact, the deeply breathing Beatrice threw water onto Puck and Tosca's heated dialogue. Though she had surmounted the initial shock, Beatrice could not digest this with ease in spite of even Puck's direction. The love affair of a man and a woman was far too lowly to borrow the knowledge of the Witch of Wisdom. Beatrice, yet, why did he make it to the palace, I suppose? The criterion for selection is excessively enigmatic, in fact. Betty laments her insufficiency of being unable to apprehend mother's profound intents, I suppose. Holding her head, Beatrice earnestly surmised the true motives of her currently absent mother. She must understand the intentions of her mother, voiced not in many words, lest she fail to fulfill her duty of being her proxy. Wrinkles forming by her lovable eyebrows, Beatrice groaned. Witnessing Beatrice's conduct, Tosca stood up, having surpassed the limit of his endurance. Tosca, there really is no time. At this rate Remina will become a sacrifice for the Blight Dragon. Beatrice, Wait again. In fact, Beatrice pointed her palm towards his muzzle as Tosca earnestly implored. The exchange made Tosca widen his eyes, vocalizing a "hmm?" But Beatrice paid no heed. If anything, she commandingly glared at the youth taller than herself. Beatrice, Blight Dragon? Did you say Blight Dragon, I suppose? Your childhood friend was chosen as sacrifice for the Blight Dragon. In fact, Tosca, that's correct. I've been saying that the whole time, haven't I? Beatrice, you didn't say even the slightest bit of that, you enormous dunce. Tosca, OWHK? His tiptoes stomped. Tosca jumped up and down with tearful eyes. However, considering how he had distressed Beatrice due to his dearth of explanation, he had earned that much. He must have also had anxiety and nervousness after having reached the palace of the witch. She had considered that, but what a truly crude elucidation it had been. However, now she had a grasp on the matter. Puck, in other words, a Blight Dragon settled close to Tosca's village, and Tosca's childhood friend. Tosca, it's Remina. Puck, right, Remina was chosen as the sacrifice is what the situation is. So, you can't run away with Remina and let the village be brought to ruin by the Blight Dragon either, and are facing immense turmoil, is what it means. Tosca powerlessly nodded as Puck encapsulated the circumstance. He hesitantly commenced reciting the situation surrounding himself, his childhood friend, and the village. Tosca, Karnats, is a small village with a population of about 50 people. Most households practice farming, including mine, and I am the second son. Remina is the same age as me and she's also my neighbor. Beatrice, get this backstory of yours out of here. In fact, Tosca, why yes. Anyhow, Remina says she's going to become the sacrifice for the Blight Dragon for the sake of the village and just won't listen. But, even if Remina were to become the sacrifice, Puck, once it has an empty stomach again it'll demand the same thing. Dragons sure are classless. Hearing Puck's impression gave no rise to a smile on Tosca's face. His childhood friend who accepted the role of being the sacrifice was a valorous young girl, but Puck's say was correct. Even if the sacrifice were to be offered, only a smidgen of peace would the Blight Dragon grant, and Tosca did not want to lose his childhood friend in exchange for that smidgen of peace. Beatrice, so, you came here searching for a way to kill the Blight Dragon, I suppose. Tosca, no. I wouldn't go that far. Beatrice, unnecessary appearances are a waste of time. In fact, coming so far for the sake of hope, then dreading your wish at the crucial point, I suppose. That is unhinged. In fact, she affirmed precisely his wish, his desire, to frantically cling to something, to wish whilst paying no heed to appearances, meant having reached the water's edge. When there no longer existed any future, hope, potentiality, only to those who could earnestly put their life on the line did the gates of the palace of the witch open, and Beatrice was one acting as proxy for the witch who offered her hand to those drowning. Beatrice, now, the Great Spirit Beatrice inquires, I suppose. What is your wish? Having arrived at the palace of the witch who grants wisdom, just what is it that you desire? In fact, Tosca, in response to Beatrice's question, Tosca's voice became huskier, tinged with heat. Nervousness parched the youth's mouth, but he prevailed over that vexing thirst. The youth bit his lips, saturating his tongue with his own blood, his blue eyes gazing at Beatrice. Tosca, I want to kill the Blight Dragon, and save Remina. Beatrice, can't hear you, I suppose. Tosca, teach me a way to kill the Blight Dragon. Remina is someone precious to me. Blood streaming from the vicinity of his mouth, Tosca powerfully beseeched with impetus as though truly vomiting blood. Listening to Tosca implore, Puck shut a single eye whilst hugging his tail. And Beatrice nodded, having heard the same implore. Beatrice, the witch's daughter, Beatrice, shall grant that wish of yours. In fact, she answered, with a smile she had done her best effort to learn from her mother. Puck, nevertheless, so the opponent is a Blight Dragon, A bit weighty for Betty's first task. Their discussion straightened out. Puck gently broke the ice as he leisurely descended. Vocalizing a ha, Tosca made a startled expression at the innocuous comment. As though awakening from a fever, he compared Beatrice and Puck with the eye. Tosca, that reminds me, I got a bit carried away but. What's this about the witch Summer being absent, or the witch's daughter, or a cat spirit summer. Beatrice, no need to make such a ruckus, I suppose. It's just as you heard, in fact. Bubby is a spirit, and Betty is Mother's daughter. And Mother, the proprietor of the palace, is absent, I suppose. Something about there being an unusual evil omen. She is currently on a trip to the eastern edge. In fact, Tosca, she's gone out, you say. When will she be able to return? Beatrice, no specific clue, I suppose. She simply comes to observe the circumstances once a month, in fact. Generally, it's usually the night of the full moon. Tosca, HK, we won't make it then, Tosca hollered, countenance pale and hands on his head. Tosca, Remina will be proffered as sacrifice on the night of the full moon. Only 10 days remain till then. Puck, exactly the X day Echidna returns on. Tosca, X. Anyhow, we must return to the village before that day. Tosca peered at Beatrice as though clinging onto her, his face yet pallid. His gaze was urging her to somehow get in contact with Echidna, but there existed no such means. The tool Echidna had invented, the conversing mirrors, were there, but she did not carry those with herself. According to her mother, she was not one who liked to look at her own face. Beatrice, it would be far too late should Mother's return be awaited. In fact, even for granting a plan instead, it would be onerous to complete preparations within 10 days from now, I suppose. Puck, even if their hands are grabbed as they drown, there's no way everybody would be saved, isn't it? Tosca, no way. Hearing Beatrice and Puck's conversation, Tosca's head hung low, heartbroken, truly ironic. For him to have made his way to the palace of the witch seeking a hand of salvation, yet for it to remain ungranted due to the pivotal witch's absence. The outcome, he wasted the remaining few fragments of time he had with his childhood friend and must return empty-handed, owning no other alternatives. Rather, there was no surety whether he would even be able to make it back to that village by the next night of the full moon. Beatrice, that is unacceptable. In fact, Puck, Betty. Puck's ears quivered at her murmur. Looking upwards at Puck, the characteristic patterns visible on Beatrice's pupils flailed. Beatrice, just as Bubby is aware, this is Betty's first task, I suppose. Mother entrusted Betty to attend during her absence, and commanded to fulfill the duties of the Palace of the Witch, in fact. Yet, to abandon the first hero who called onto this place due to an absence of means, are you fine with something like that, I suppose? Puck, admitting not being able to do what can't be done is also a show of courage, wouldn't you say? Beatrice, but it is Betty's mission to be useful to Mother, in fact. Puck, mission. Puck grimaced at Beatrice's words as she firmly clenched her fist and touched her chest. The word mission was a heavy one for spirits, artificial spirits, Beatrice and Puck. So incredibly heavy it was beyond any possible comparison, constituting the core of their selves. Both had taken birth together, not naturally, but by the witch, and their existences held purpose. Beatrice's did, so did Puck's. That was, Beatrice, as long as Betty is serving as Mother's proxy, no hands seeking salvation shall be shaken off, I suppose. Tosca, Beatrice Chan. Beatrice, why would you suffix Chan onto Betty's name there? In fact, Tosca, that who RTHK? Tosca was moved to see Beatrice be so ardent, only for her to downright step on his feet. However, she believed this exuberance made for the undone final push, the blight dragon extermination of Karnats, as sought by the hero Tosca. Beatrice, mine self Beatrice, shall grant that wish in Mother's stead, I suppose. Beatrice declared sonorously whilst vigorously beating her chest. His eyes widened upon her pronouncement. Tosca inhaled with the trodden foot grasped in his hands. Tosca, I do appreciate the sentimentar. Beatrice, got tired of listening to your unneeded objections. In fact, with the toes of his other foot stepped on, Tosca hopped on the floor with one leg at a time. For Tosca no, for outsiders to make light of Beatrice assuming from her outward appearance was as anticipated. However, that was immense imprudence. Beatrice, Betty is Mother's daughter. Being lumped together with some random lackluster spirit is intolerable, I suppose. Besides, if Betty will go then Bubby will also come along without fail. In fact, Puck, well, that's true. I've been told to look after Betty by Echidna anyways, and there's only so far you can actually let your cute kid travel into the world. Tosca, Puck Summer aside, Beatrice Char. Summer is also a spirit, tending to both of his feet whilst seated on the chair. Tosca tilted his head as he visually compared Beatrice and Puck. Tosca, I completely thought spirits were like, either softly floating around like lights, or otherwise had taken the form of animals like Puck Summer. Puck, that's correct. Though on instances there are also some who specialize in taking the forms of humans, a great deal of spirits' original forms are animal-esque forms. Same goes for me, too, Beatrice. For Betty, it is simply that this is the form Mother brought forth, I suppose. Of course, a spirit's might is not determined by shape and form, in fact. Even Bubby is so furry and lovable, I suppose. Puck, Tosca, well, I don't really know about that, but the spirit siblings held their heads high side by side, before Tosca pronounced ah and formed an expression of having noticed something. Tosca, spirits live far longer than humans, yes. Then could it be that the same applies to the two of you? Beatrice, oh of course, in fact. It would be trouble should you misinterpret this brimming majesty and intellect, I suppose. Tosca, I knew it. May I ask what approximately your age is? Puck, both Betty and I would be around 3 years old. Yeah. Tosca, you're totally young, Tosca exclaimed, his anticipation proven inaccurate, as Puck shrugged his shoulders. Levitating before the let-down Tosca's face, Puck pointed his tail forward and remarked, "Do you hear me? Puck, don't have any misunderstandings, okay? A cat's 3 years equate to around a human's 30 years. Tosca, but still, that's way younger than my old man, and going by that line of reason Beatrice Summer is." Whoops, Beatrice, MGH, don't conveniently dodge. In fact, Tosca, I absolutely will dodge. Tosca evaded Beatrice's heel, revealing his intent to not be stepped on countlessly. He then proceeded to gaze at the two, commenting it's no good after all. Tosca, I appreciate your sentiment. But I cannot entangle children, people who are younger than me, into something so perilous. I will run back to the village. Beatrice, you do not appear to be a fellow so laudable that you would then spend the remainder of your time together, I suppose. You intend to challenge the Blight Dragon for the sake of your childhood friend. In fact, Tosca, HK, Beatrice, what an inconceivably colossal fool, I suppose. Something like tackling a battle that cannot be won is meaningless. In fact, his eyes cast down, Tosca sunk his teeth into his lips upon Beatrice's discernment, unable to rebut. For she had hit the bull's eye. For the sake of his childhood friend, he had endangered his life to pay a call to this palace, banking his dependency onto the Witch of Wisdom. Inversely said, it implied the absence of any allies who would fight with him. Beatrice, now that you have come here, something like that won't be allowed, I suppose. The Witch of Wisdom grants wisdom, in order to elevate those seeking salvation. Then, what can be accorded is not restricted to wisdom. In fact, Tosca, Beatrice, it shall be said once more. You seek a way to kill the Blight Dragon. And Betty gave her word to respond to that. Thus, she shall respond. Betty will, with this life of hers at stake, for might to dwell in her words, in these moments, set ablaze was a definite flame within Beatrice's soul, and that flame transfigured into an inferno, engulfing even Tosca, gazing before her, within. Scorched by the blaze, Tosca inhaled and deeply lowered his head as light sojourned within his blue eyes. Tosca, thank you very much. Prithee, fight by my side, no disputation necessary this time. Marking the beginning of her first task, fastening the doors of the palace and arranging a parting letter for the time her mother returned during their absence, Beatrice, alongside Puck, exited the palace accompanying Tosca with all preparations completed. Beatrice, the target time is the night of the full moon 10 days from now. Betty will make sure to reach, I suppose. Tosca, to be honest, I believe we will barely make it. Since the climb up to this palace was nothing short of extraordinary, many set forth for the palace of the witch in pursuit of wisdom. But the vast majority of them were filtered out due to scanty courage and ability. The prime reason being the mountain trail leading towards the palace, so bedeviling it could no longer even be dubbed a mountain trail. Cold sweat emerged on Tosca through mere recollection. However, Beatrice, relax, in fact. The hindering vermin up until the palace are only there when entering. They won't intrude when returning. Tosca, really? But, there's also the rumor about the forest of no return. Puck, those kinds of rumors have been spread because if you come to the forest with scrappy feelings and ability, then you'll only have a bad time, I think. Echidna's a girl who does those sorts of things. Tosca's cognizance seemed to be enormously jolted by the impact of the truth he had been informed about, and, seeing a rise in the number of humans conversant with her mother's true form was something delightful yet slightly lonesome for Beatrice. Beatrice, regardless, there is no apprehension for descending the mountain, in fact. Tosca, yes. If we can just exit the mountain and the forest, then I'll run while carrying Beatrice Summer on my shoulder the rest of the way. Puck Summer will. Puck, I can keep up by flying so it's all good. Tosca nodded as Puck responded with a relaxed pitch, waving his tail. Putting the two's discourse aside, Beatrice looked back towards the palace and gently tapered her eyes whilst standing before the gates. A parental home for Beatrice, for by the palace of wisdom entrusted to her by her mother albeit momentarily, something stood out about being apart from it. Tosca, Beatrice Summer, is it truly all right to be absent from the palace? Puck, well, only 1 or 2 people make their way to it in a year, and if they happen to reach it during the time of absence then they're just unlucky I suppose, so it can't be helped, I guess. This is also the first time Betty is leaving her home, so let's let her resolve her heart. Tosca, it's also the first time she's leaving the palace. Puck, is it something to be surprised about? Puck caressed his own face with a hand before Tosca opened his eyes wide. Puck, even animals live their entire lives within their territories if they can defend it, right? If there never rises a need to go afar, then you too would live all your life inside that tiny village of yours. It's the same thing. Tosca, if you say so, that's true. I suppose. Puck, Betty's thing is also important, but I think you'd be better off worrying for yourself. There probably won't be any time to take breaks between this place and your village, so are you fine with the way you're prepared? In accordance with Beatrice's assessment of it being meager, judging Tosca's equipment to vastly fall short of the minimum necessary standard would be correct. Despite being congruous with him being a son of a farmer, it would inescapably be termed as unsuitable for a wayfarer undertaking long travels. His garbs, his footwear, even the sword hanging on his hip, all were paltry and of poor quality. Puck, this is coming a bit too late, but I'm surprised you made your way to the palace. It can only be categorized as love and courage making up for it, isn't it? Tosca, but only as compensation. Also, my body's been burlier than others since long before, so that may be the reason. Puck, burly. That's sort of a divine protection, I wonder? Well, it's gotta be at least that much or it'd be impossible, yeah, Tosca answered whilst scratching his head as Puck made sense of it, surmising it to be something in such wise, and, making end of her brief farewell to her parental home, Beatrice regrouped with the two. Beatrice, sorry for the wait, I suppose. It's time to depart, in fact. Tosca, understood. Beatrice Summer, your luggage? Even Tosca, who sported lightweight equipment and clothing for tackling the towering mountain, was stupefied by Beatrice's travel outfit, for nothing about it had altered since the time they had their dialogue in the parlor. Beatrice, Betty is certain to have told you, I suppose. Betty is a spirit. This outfit and even physique are molded with mana, in fact. Betty has total freedom over changing clothes and refashioning. Hand luggage is a mere hindrance, I suppose. Tosca, then, what about water or food? Puck, unnecessary for us. We'll take 'em if you give 'em, but simply gobbling up the mana suspended in the air is sufficient. That's why, I'm also empty-handed, and naked. Beatrice, Bobby has natural fur, which is just the best, in fact. Beatrice light-heartedly nodded as she rubbed cheeks with Puck who perched on her shoulder. Hearing this interchange made Tosca say, is that so, in admiration.
Tosca, if that's the case then I, a human, am looking to be the most burdensome.
Beatrice, humph. Now that Betty has decided to follow through with it, it is her duty to pull you along, I suppose. Through the course of the journey she will provide you with water, and even help with hunting if necessary. In fact, Puck, we can also give rise to a tailwind, and level the ground to make it easier to run. More than satisfactory, wouldn't you say? Wind blew with a swing of Beatrice's hand, ground was smoothed with a swing of Puck's tail. Beholding this with his own 2 eyes, Tosca cleared his throat and was yet again allured by the two's might as spirits. Furthermore, he learnt that acting with queer restraint pertaining to the two's might would be discourteous, as well. Tosca. I understand. I shall borrow the power of you too. Prithee, make haste toward the itinerary to the village first. Beatrice, agreeable, I suppose. Now, well then, you'll have to carry Betty in your arms. In fact, nodding with a yes, Tosca's hands reached for Beatrice, both her arms outstretched. And he scooped her up and coiled his arm around Beatrice's waist, carrying her by his side as though carrying firewood. Tosca, all right. Arg, it hurt HK? Beatrice, don't go all right-ing, I suppose. What, in fact, is this humiliating way of carrying? Tosca shrieked with tearful eyes, with his armpit pinched by Beatrice whom he was carrying. Truly, just what did he regard the exalted spirit as? Tosca's conduct lacked the natural forethought towards even a lady, prior to Beatrice's honor. Beatrice, a peasant after all, I suppose. Wield more delicacy, the daintiness of carrying a baby, in fact, Tosca, a baby. I understand. Right, Beatrice, no problems, I suppose. This time gently carried in his arms like a child, Beatrice pardoned Tosca's insolence. Puck threw himself down on Beatrice's chest, and the standard stance of the 3 departing on the journey was now contrived. Tosca, all right then, I shall run straight ahead. Please let me know if there is ever any issue. Beatrice, well, you can keep running without care, I suppose. This side will handle the earth flattening, I suppose. Tosca, understood. Well then, firm strength pouring into his legs, Tosca then broke into a sprint, Beatrice still in his arms. Her entire frame basking in the acceleration and wind, Beatrice left the palace of the witch for the first time. As the palace slowly, steadily faded away into the distance, she attempted to look back onto it in a final display of longing and valediction. Beatrice, WR, Tosca bolted at a velocity infinitely greater. The palace had already become invisible in a matter of seconds as the forms of the 3 raced down the hilly road and vaulted into the dense clouds. Within the clouds, with no longer present the white titans of ice that functioned as impeding obstacles in the paths of those with their sights set on the palace, as if verbatim flying over the bare rock that made for an unfavorable foothold, Tosca hurtled downward. Beatrice sensed no room for the assistance of magic in his unwavering momentum and speed. Truly, momentum akin to a gale. Tosca, no hindrances when returning. Seems like that was true. Beatrice, ababa, you bababa. Tosca, if this is how things are, then it looks like we'll be able to descend the mountain in half a day. We'll make it, I'll make it, Remina. Tosca, exhilarated, shan't notice the grueling condition Beatrice was in, within his arms. On Beatrice's chest, Puck caressed his whiskers whilst pronouncing an R, being rocked similar to her. Puck, I did think it was weird since he managed to climb up the mountain, but this kid also wasn't normal after all. So he whispered, his expression utterly drained. Blight Dragon was nothing but a convenient name for dragons harboring enmity toward humans, identical to how the spirits that yielded harm onto others were labeled as blight spirits. However, unlike spirits who for the most part did not leave their birthplaces, dragons sought to expand their turf by their own accord. This resulted in the birth of their conflict with people who originally lived there, subsequently starting to be designated as blight dragons. Beatrice, in other words, dragons being regarded as blight dragons is solely a matter of humans' point of view. In fact, Tosca, I see. Then, the dragon who showed up on a mountain close to the village is also, Beatrice, it means it is one who literally spread its wings wide in order to expand its turf, I suppose. Puck, in these times even the dragons are all worked up due to their population having risen too much. They're likely troubled themselves, seeing the places they could use as dwellings become smaller and smaller. The time was one of total darkness, Beatrice elucidated about dragons whilst hewing the campfire. Half a day since their departure from the palace of the witch, Tosca's swordsmanship had exemplarily exited the montane forest and they had successfully escaped the mountain as well as the forest of the witch. Nothing existed for Beatrice to draw a comparison with, but by Puck's word his accomplishment was akin to monstrous. Tosca, monstrous you say, that is an overappraisal. Puck caressed his whiskers as Tosca presented a humble response to the evaluation. What his round, black eyes glanced at was not the modest Tosca, but his background. Behind Tosca, lying on the ground was a titanic, ferocious-looking lion, black fur similar to wires, endowed with sharp fangs and claws. The quadruped possessed brutishness kindred with its fiendish appearance, but its eyes had already lost their light, the thread of its life severed, and the one to inexorably bring down this titanic brute was nobody but Tosca. Puck, I guess it's a guilty low? Not very intelligent, but their might speaks for itself. And you tidied it up so easily. You know, are you sure you don't hunt mere dragons and stuff even without us being there? Tosca, please stop, Puck Summer. You'll know once you see any actual dragons. There, not like this stupid dog. For my body to tremble non-stop during a confrontation has happened for the first time ever since with Big Brother. Swiveling his sword with an accustomed way of wielding, Tosca dissected the titanic brute he had brought down. Peeling its skin, chopping the spouting organs and blood into casual sizes, he held it on the bonfire concocted on thin woods. Beatrice, will other animals not gather due to the scent of grilling meat? In fact, Tosca, please be at ease. This guy surely has the white horn on its forehead. Other animals don't come close to animals with this horn. It also serves as an animal repel if you carry its blood. Beatrice, you seem familiar with this, I suppose. Beatrice sighed as she gazed at his cooking, upon Tosca's display of practical knowledge, though in truth, Beatrice's plan had been to flaunt her ability and make Tosca sing her praises like as expected of the daughter of the witch Summer. By the time of having reached up to this point, Beatrice, Betty's plan failed because you're a monster. In fact, Tosca, now you too, Beatrice Summer. Believe me, I am no monster. I can just move my body a very teensy bit more than other people. I do not compare with a dragon. A bitter grin, Tosca vanished his smile and fixed his pupils onto the flame. His eyes conveyed a certain longing, that he truly should have been a monster. Had Tosca been a monster that could prey even upon a dragon, then he could have protected his childhood friend without having to depend on anyone. Tosca, no matter of how many of these stupid dogs I hunt, it is nothing worth taking pride in. Puck, that itself makes it a pitiable show for this child who got hunted. Well, it's said they don't have anything in their minds aside from attacking humans, so I guess it's only fair. Seems these types of animals are called witch beasts. Yeah, Beatrice, witch beasts. Like blight dragons, they're not called blight brutes or something, I suppose. Puck, well it is pretty hard to pronounce. Blight brute. Like beetroot. Blight brute. Puck blew a breath onto the grilling meat of the witch beast whilst uttering. That instant, the cleaved fat begot an aromatic scent before Tosca's belly gave rise to a large grumble. Tosca, frankly, their meat doesn't taste good at all. Puck, I see. Tosca, because of bad stuff being stockpiled in their bodies or something, the village headman had said. Can't be called anything extravagant either, I'll eat, though. Articulating so, Tosca proceeded to pick up a skewer and heartily dug in. His expression then observably clouded. With a disconsolate look on his face he put down the skewer, and, Tosca, Beatrice Summer, would you like one as well? Beatrice, why, did you think Betty would accept it after seeing your frown just now? In fact, Tosca, no, I just thought there should be more casualties. Beatrice, just where did you drop your respect for Betty, I suppose? Beatrice nailed her rage onto Tosca, who offered her another skewer. A half-joke, Tosca obediently drew back the skewer as well. Puck, then, guess I'll take it in Betty's stead. Chomp, Beatrice, Bubby, Puck, gobble gobble, gobble gobble. It's disgusting. One more, Tosca, one more you say, managing to eat it alone is a feat, declared Puck with a frown, having snatched the skewer from Tosca's hand and munched the meat. Considering how small his bites were, Fully eating one skewer worth of grilled meat alone was an immense task for Puck. Laughing at Puck's conduct, Tosca gorged on whatever remained of the first skewer. Guilty Lo's body was large, plenty of edible portions were still left. A number of skewers were being grilled on the flame, and Beatrice's gaze intermittently glanced toward them. She was a spirit, so it was improbable for her to become hungry. It was improbable, and yet, Puck, eating a witch beast is also a good way to cover for the knowledge you lack, Betty. Beatrice, Betty was thinking the same, in fact. No doubt even Mother would not have experienced eating a witch beast, I suppose. It is an opportunity to be useful to Mother, in fact. Even the studious Echidna surely mustn't have ensnared herself in this order of bizarre eating. Her sense of purpose of being useful to her mother, amalgamated with the inquisitiveness for the unknown before her eyes, Beatrice nervously took one of the grilling skewers in her hand, and, with Tosca and Puck's watchful eye over her, took one bite of earnest heartfelt desire. Beatrice, it's disgusting, I suppose. The instant she took a bite, she felt the noxiousness characteristic of carnivores fill her mouth. Furthermore, the meat itself was rigid beyond chewing, and the oozing flesh fluids upon each crunch were bitter like mud. Truly, flavor akin to chewing sand. Beatrice, taste of hell, in fact. Shouldn't have eaten it, I suppose. Puck, on top of that, this thing's super filled with bad mana, so it's poison for us. What the village headman from Tosca's place said was correct. Beatrice, you a cough. Cough cough. In fact, Beatrice spat out what she once had in her mouth in tremendous fluster. Let her be termed as ill-mannered, but she did not possess the courage to swallow poison. And even if she did, that would amount to nothing but foolhardiness. Beside her, Puck also spat out the flesh into the flame with a cough. Puck, that's how it is, so I don't really recommend it to you either, Tosca. Even if you're not a spirit, bad content may start accumulating if you eat too much. Tosca, is that so? But, I killed it, so, Puck, must eat the life you've taken, that type of thinking, eh? I think that itself is praiseworthy, but don't you get into pretty rough spots if you apply that to everything? You seem like you could even eat some venomous insects. Tosca, even I would prefer not to, though an argument quite extreme, it seemed to have sufficient effect on Tosca. Informed of the possibility that his body may get eaten into from within, even Tosca lowered the skewer in his grip. However, his eyes, yet remorseful, were contemplating the witch beast meat cooling down. Beatrice, why are you fussing over that piece of meat, I suppose? To think you would get that hungry, humans need to put some limits on their inexpediency. In fact, Tosca, it's not that I'm hungry. It's just that, Big Brother had once earlier said that I'd get stronger if I ate strong creatures, so just out of habit. Manifesting a bitter smile, a sigh leaped from Tosca as he released the grilled meat into the flames. Beatrice felt a queer sensation jab her chest, beholding Tosca's expression. The expression of powerfully yearning for something, very much resembling that of pursuit for an unattainable wish. Puck, Big Brother, you say, you have an elder brother. That reminds me, you did say you were the second son. Yeah, Tosca, yes. I have an elder brother who is slightly older than me. Though he is so strong, you wouldn't believe he belongs to this world. Beatrice, well, if that isn't another overstatement, I suppose. If he is so strong, then you should have left the blight dragon extermination up to your so-called big brother. In fact, Tosca, Big Brother, has gone out of the village, so, his words were not the echo of a younger brother lamenting the absence of his dependable elder brother. Something far more convoluted, like the mud named a long span of time having sedimented in a water well. All one could do in order to draw the water therein was to remove the mud aside and pray for the fortune of the water well having not dried up. Beatrice, but, Betty wants none of that dismal nonsense, I suppose. Tosca, Beatrice Summer, Beatrice, don't be irresolute, in fact, human. No matter how much you lose heart, you cannot become your siblings, I suppose. That is a matter of course. In fact, pruning away the ashes on her footwear, Beatrice looked downward towards the mute Tosca. Hands on her hips, as though launching a kick into the melancholic youth's back. Beatrice, but still, you will save the village, I suppose. Tosca, Beatrice, you didn't give up, searched for what you could do and aimed for the palace. Though Mother is absent, Betty and Bubby have mobilized your wish. In fact, no miracles befell upon those who undertook no action. No rains blessed upon those who simply looked towards the heavens. In a world where all simply withered unless one kept moving forward, the will to advance was utmost sacred. By the point of this declaration, Beatrice noticed her own heated temper. Tosca's gaze at her now rapidly altered into a source of embarrassment. Beatrice, at any rate, that's how it is. In fact, must wake up early tomorrow as well, so sleep right away, I suppose. You'll have to run while carrying Betty in your arms tomorrow as well. In fact, Beatrice swiftly articulated whilst concealing her embarrassment, cheeks tinged red. She subsequently lied on the ground blanketed by leaf litter, in the rear of the fallen tree being used as substitute for seating. She was not reluctant to lie on the ground either, for the impurities on her dress were erased each time she shifted positions. Though she was anticipating the disgrace saturating her face red to rob her of her sleep, Beatrice, her insecurity needless, mind and body exhausted by her first travel to afar, Beatrice's consciousness reaped the allurement of deep sleep. Beginning to hear her quiet breaths of sleep within a matter of seconds, Tosca exchanged a glance with Puck. Puck, looks like she was tired, after all. As you saw, she'd been in pretty high spirits. Tosca, looks to be so. Since it was also apparently the first time she left her house. To think she would devote such efforts for my sake, when we've just met. An intent gaze at the wavering bonfire, Tosca put one hand on another and closed his eyes. All kinds of intricate emotions pirouetted within the depths of his chest. Gratitude towards Beatrice and Puck, longing for the childhood friend he had left behind, love and despise for his elder brother absent from the village during such crucial times, apprehension whether the choice he made was the correct one or not, illimitable and unceasing, all of them, thorns incessantly tormenting Tosca since he had reached the palace of the witch, and since they had departed. However, Tosca, I will save the village. Puck, he, Betty said so, yeah. I also think it's correct. It was hasty and careless to rely on the witch for the blight dragon extermination, but it was right that you abided by your intuition. Tosca, is that supposed to be a compliment? Puck, of course. Puck nodded, though the spirit's words were every so often mingled with an unknown language. Though his own illiteracy was distressing, had he truly yet chosen the best out of the attainable options? Puck, that is something Betty and you will prove going forward, isn't it? Astonished by the words as though his innermost heart had been read, Tosca then beamed a wry smile. Putting the lovely young girl over there aside, he could not possibly rival the easy-going, floating kitten over here. That admission in his mind, Tosca picked up one of the skewers that had been grilled to burns. Rather than crisp, the meat had about halfway turned into ash, though the flavor of the raw ingredient may now have vanished instead. Matters will remain busy tomorrow onwards as well. Regardless, however meagerly, he must fill his stomach however much possible, subsequently biting into the burnt meat. Tosca, I guess, which beasts aren't stuffed to be eaten after all? Grumbling a quibble, Tosca chewed the meat stuck onto the bones until the very end. Next day onwards resumed the journey of the three, lasting for shorter than 10 days. Beatrice, neither tailwinds nor earth flattening are needed for you, to be honest. You're disgusting, I suppose. Tosca, isn't disgusting going a bit too far? Tosca hurtled, Beatrice up in his arms, at a velocity enough to receive the reward of such aspersion. His sprint was so excessively swift that to a bystander Tosca's legs would appear as invisible, and any which beasts or stray dogs that attempted to pounce and halt him were all deserted behind, their opportunity galloping past them. Puck, not disgusting, but it is uncanny. Could it be that everyone in Tosca's village is a monster like you? Tosca, old man, Mum, Remina and the others are all normal. No, I'm telling you I'm normal as well. Beatrice, rattles of denial coming from a guy who himself is aware, in fact. Quite loose-lipped, I suppose. Tosca, when I'm eating nothing but witch beasts, you two have a grim look in your eyes at the time of campfire, so I tried catching fish in the river today. A peculiar fish washed by the riverside floundered, as Tosca looked at the two whilst basking in the splashes of water. Beatrice and Puck, identically soaked due to the waves evoked by the peculiar fish, commented on the gargantuan peculiar fish of a length that all three of them could be lined side by side and its tail fin would still remain revealed. Puck, for something that was hunted to be eaten, it's way too big. Wonder if he doesn't know how to hold back. Beatrice, to begin with, the repulsiveness of its appearance is identical to that of a witch beast, in fact. Despite being a human, does he not know that not just flavor but appearance is also important for meals, I suppose? Tosca, I can hear you, the two of you. Puck, who would have thought that fish was the lord of the fishes in the river feared in the nearby village? Pretty big coincidence. Beatrice, not a quantity that could have been disposed of, so it was correct to hand it over to the village. In fact, by having brought down the lord of the nuisance fishes and handing it over, they had been amiably welcomed by the residents of the village. Because those peculiar fishes had become an obstruction in fishing, they had seemingly verged on drying up. Allegedly, they were badgered to sojourn in the village and partake in the banquet to be conducted. But, Tosca, I also must save my village, after all. Puck, commendable. But, the one you want to save is Moresso, your childhood friend, than the village. Yeah, Beatrice, that village headman implored to give his daughter to you, I suppose. What a waste. In fact, Tosca, no matter what you say, Remina is the only one for me. Their journey had been a smooth one, but on occasion perilous circumstances paid a call to them. Melded with dusk, the claws of a titanic brute ambushing them from the shadows, Tosca skillfully warded them off with the sword he wielded, and the rebounding blade beautifully bisected its beefy throat. Sable blood spouted, the entire body of the red-haired youth bathed in it with no shift in expression. Repugnance, shirking, were luxurious, albeit Moresso futile and needless sentiments in the midst of battle. Letting those not perturb his mind, Tosca braced his paltry sword forward to the next, free from neglect. Kyurioshia, a ferocious, truculent roar echoed, jolting the parched night of the wasteland. Was a witch beast assimilating shadows, the witch beast that had assailed the troop on the first night as well, members of the Guiltilo species that too, a horde of them. Perhaps due to negligence of having become accustomed to the journey, they seemed to have inadvertently entered the hunting ground of the horde, though Tosca too had acted tough and contrasted the opponent with dragons as nothing but animals. Tosca, but if they're large in numbers, then it's definitely rough. Chased by the opposition against the impertinent continued linkage of witch beasts, Tosca too felt his composure whittle. Increase of wounds caused by the grazing claws and fangs, the scent of his flowing blood roused the Guiltilo. Beatrice and Puck watched over Tosca's labors from afar. They had not erased their presences or concealed themselves. The Guiltilo had simply put the young girl and kitten for later and prioritized opposing the menace before their eyes. Tosca, conceit conveying that a small, frail creature could be turned into a dish later on as well. Puck, to be neglecting us, guess they really aren't very intelligent after all. Regardless, Tosca is putting up a pretty good fight over there. So Betty, what do we do? Beatrice. Betty will. Puck, I see. Okay, got it. Snuggling under Beatrice's hair, Puck proceeded to emerge following her brief reply. Puck's tiny frame then headed above the battleground of whirling blood. By that point the vigilance of the witch beasts, who had made light of the spirits as trifle articles, turned toward him. They brandished their claws overhead towards Puck, who was easily within their grasp upon a single leap. Puck, such casual mistakes unfortunately aren't going to get you any gold stars. The following instant innumerable stumps of ice stitched the horde of Guiltilo to the ground. The witch beasts simultaneously bellowed, their limbs and torsos lunged, having been verbatim shot through by the glaciating impact. However, the solatium for erring the enemy's war potential was a heavy one. Before long, ice spread from the mouth of the wounds burst by the icicles, congealing even the throats, relinquishing their death wails as the witch beasts transmuted into ice. With this, concluded the battle of tonight as well. Tosca, Puck Summer. Puck, no need to thank me. I'd been having it pretty easy up until now, after all. Tosca, no, if you're this strong then please provide assistance more quickly. The injured Tosca gave a wry smile to Puck, blood cascading from his cheeks and forehead. His correct articulation made Puck raise his eyebrows with a whoops, whistling away in an attempt to varnish the topic over. The frosty sculptures of ice afterwards shattered, destroying the witch beasts down to their finest. Puck, now then, coming to Tosca's wounds, Beatrice, Betty will heal them, I suppose. This is nothing. In fact, Beatrice secured the duty for herself before Puck commenced his treatment. She zoomed over, hand aloft, and a pale light started healing the wounds Tosca bore. The mild sensation briskly and gently closed up the wounds. Tosca sighed in relief as well. And once all of his wounds were closed, he briskly stretched his back. Tosca, all right, the pain's all gone too. Thanks, Beatrice Summer. Beatrice, your gratitude vaguely seems to lack respect for Betty, I suppose. Her expression austere, Beatrice averted her eyes away from Tosca and murmured. Beside her, Puck groaned a hum with a troubled expression whilst viewing the shattered ice sculptures of the witch beasts. Puck, Fields Way Road's self-assertive kids like these don't often flock together with others. Tosca, on top of that, it is strange that we encountered them over here. It's normal for people to come and go by this path in this area, even if they're witch beasts. They never expanded their turfs or anything, yet. Beatrice, then, the answer is simple, in fact. They were driven out of their original dwelling, and were in the midst of escaping, I suppose. Beatrice's theory gave rise to a staggered expression on Tosca. Seeming to have reached an identical conclusion as Beatrice, Puck nodded with a yeah whilst caressing his whiskers. Puck, if the promised night of the full moon is the limit of the dragon's hunger, then it must be starting to get into a bad mood now. That may have agitated the atmosphere, which is why the witch beasts are also running away. Tosca, it's about time, isn't it? Puck, devoid of nervousness, contrary to him was Tosca, taut with pressing emotions. Imposing on herself as much nervousness, Beatrice too ascertained what lay ahead of the highway of night. Exactly 9 days since they had departed from the palace, the faintly waned moon of the night sky would surely fall to a purely round, spherical full moon void of any impurities tomorrow. Beatrice somehow made it in time, in fact. The promised night of the full moon, I suppose, Beatrice muttered. Puck and Tosca consented whilst maintaining silence. The journey, Beatrice's first albeit a short one, its end was imminent before their eyes.
Loving the Days Gone By starting from zero, Chapter 2, Night of Stars Descent.
Beatrice, and so, Betty and Bubby, along with the foolhardy human, reached the end of the journey, which lasted shorter than 10 days, and arrived at the crux. In fact, Lewis, it certainly is a tremendous adventure. Despite only having unwillingly grumbled in the beginning, once she gained the momentum of reciting, words escaped her as though brimming over. Stirring the hot pot with a spoon whilst listening to this, Lewis intermittently revealed the nail-biting tension she felt via facial expressions and utterances, a truly excellent listener. Thanks to this, Beatrice unwittingly indulged herself in reminiscing as well. Anyhow, the story now arrived at the critical dragon extermination, but, now that is a really interesting tale. What happens next? Beatrice, yuck, I suppose. Before she could resume narrating, Beatrice grimaced upon hearing an unpleasant voice. Though the voice came from behind, she need not turn back. For he came around to her beforehand. Yuck doesn't make for a greeting, does it? Won't you allow me to join in on your story? Interposing so and inclining his body, the individual somewhere between a youngster and a man, his navy blue hair stretching long, clad in dodgy devilishness, was peering at Beatrice's visage. His entrance had Lewis smile in Beatrice's stead. Lewis, Roswell Summer, are you finished with your business? Roswell, yes, it all went quite smoothly. It helps that the people here are all so cooperative. By their aid. It's ought to have made for another step closer toward the realization of teacher's dearest wish. Lewis, I am elated to hear so. Beatrice Summer, you mustn't hang your head low. Eyes clear blue, the grinning youth. Roswell's entrance impelled Beatrice to scowl further, subsequently giving up on keeping her gaze cast downward for how futile it held. Beatrice, got it I suppose. Defeat accepted, in fact. You, from where had you been eavesdropping, I suppose? So distasteful, in fact. Roswell, eavesdropping, that's a nasty way to put it. To begin with, it had been decided that we would be having dinner here. If you're to start reminiscing in a place like this, then it's only a matter of course it'd enter my ears. Beatrice failed to pronounce even an uck as Roswell shrugged. Not pertaining exclusively to the time within sanctuary, meals were to be had with everyone as much as possible. That was a precept established by the witch Echidna, a decree neither Beatrice nor Lewis, nor even Roswell could flout, although, just about the only one to feel tormented by this precept was Beatrice, being opposed to having to give company to Roswell. Lewis, Roswell Summer, would you also happen to harbor any interest in Beatrice Summer's prior life? Roswell, of course. It's a shame Beatrice doesn't talk much about her past. Since we're often compared, I had heard about the presence of her so-called older brother, but, Beatrice, you aren't something worth even a comparison with Bubby, I suppose. Don't be conceited. In fact, Roswell, Velp, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Taking a path around the hot pot atop flames, Roswell then boldly seated himself immediately beside Beatrice. Even when Beatrice shifted away, he consistently got that much closer and covered the distance in between. The man possessed no other intent but to wholeheartedly make Beatrice boundlessly groan. Roswell, it's a chance to get closer to the enigmas of your Bubby. It also makes me really curious how your first adventure concluded, Beatrice. Lewis, I am also incredibly curious about that. Will Tosca Summer be able to protect his childhood friend? Finding an ally in the naive Lewis, Roswell's odious pupils gawped at Beatrice. Of course, she did not have the option to not tell the rest after having come this far, but if that were to mean delighting Roswell, it was simply human nature for her to fail recounting enjoyably. Beatrice, Betty is an exalted spirit, so human nature isn't the correct term, I suppose. Roswell, there's no need to fuss over such minute semantics. Now then, considering how I'm not even worth comparing to him, what feats will your splendid Bubby make, I wonder? Beatrice, do you hold something against Bubby, in fact? So pig-headed, I suppose. Beatrice furrowed her brows in dubiousness, his speech coming off as strangely thorny in essence. But Roswell provided no answer, as Lewis smiled bitterly, expression convoluted. Beatrice, it feels vaguely uncanny, but moving on, in fact. After approximately 10 days, Betty and the others arrived at Karnat's a day prior to the night of the full moon. Lewis, then, Beatrice Summer and the villagers worked together, and the dragon extermination. Beatrice did not come to be, in fact, a thought dearth in appropriate vigilance toward the circumstance truly befitting of Lewis, but the reality did not unfold in identical vein. With the gazes of the two listeners in mind, Beatrice returned to that night once again. Beatrice, the reason why he came to Betty and everyone's place, was because he had no allies in the village, I suppose. Tosca, why, won't everyone try to stand up? An enraged bellow, in company of a mighty kick to the floor by Tosca, having assessed him as the owner of a fairly composed personality for his age by dint of their meeting and journey. Beatrice was substantially astonished upon witnessing Tosca's exasperated form. However, what astonished her furthermore were the reactions of the dwellers of Karnats who welcomed Tosca. A night preceding the promised night of full moon with the Blight Dragon, Tosca had returned home bringing help from the palace of the witch. It would be appreciable should they be delighted about not having to sacrifice a young girl from the village. In that case, despite feeling piqued by having to depend upon others, their purpose would have surely been fulfilled. However, the responses they attained in reality ran counter to any such conjectures and expectations. What a foolish thing you've done, Tosca. Went to the Witch of Wisdom's place, and brought back the daughter of the witch from there. How will we ever be able to pay any such recompense? A white-haired grandsire, the village headman mithered so with trembling vocals whilst solitarily facing Tosca in his home. Hearing this, the redness of Tosca's visage incremented further. Tosca, I don't mean to have everyone from the village shoulder the debt I've incurred. I arbitrarily went to the witch Summer's place. That's why, I'll pay for the recompense. Headman, that's only natural. Your actions were self-indulgent. However, it would have been better had that made for borrowing the witch's might. His words befogged midway through, the village headman's cynic eye darted towards Beatrice and Puck. His glance was unpleasant, but not to an unanticipated degree. Beatrice had simply an unamused expression. However, it was Tosca who could not pardon this discourteous gaze. Tosca, I implored Beatrice Summer and Puck Summer to come with me. Please do not direct a gaze of this kind towards them. I will work together with the two of them and, Headman, rescue Remina, you proclaim? Will you be able to oppose that fearsome blight dragon? Headman, foolish. Truly foolish, Tosca. Why did you leave the village? Had you remained in the village, you could have spent identical time with Remina, albeit for a scant 10 days. Articulating with pity, the village headman's eyes turned to outside of the building. Beyond the window, visible far away, was something akin to a shrine, the wooden door comprising its entrance tightly fastened. Headman, Remina is inside of the shrine. Preparing for tomorrow, she has commenced her ritual for purification. You shan't even be allowed to meet her. Tosca, Remina, Headman, oh Tosca, why must you have departed from the village? Should you have remained here, you would have made time and memories with Remina. The same way as you, Remina regarded you with fondness, whether he set to chide him or was simply hopelessly inconsiderate. Anyhow, the village headman's remarks violated Tosca's fury, which mustn't be disturbed. Tosca glared at the village headman, canines bared. Tosca, Remina. The one Remina loves is not me, but Big Brother. As Remina's dad, shouldn't you be the one who knows that the most? Relinquishing this assertion behind, Tosca stormed out of the village headman's home, his tail jolted by the vigor of the fierce gale birthed by Tosca. Puck exchanged a look with Beatrice. Beatrice drew her jaw in before Puck glided through the air and pursued the vanishing figure, and, with Tosca and Puck's departure, the only ones left behind were Beatrice and the village headman. Beatrice, Betty too, finds that to be quite witless, in fact. But his judgment to depend on the witch of wisdom was correct, I suppose. Betty is none other than the proxy of the witch, in fact. Headman, however, the pivotal witch summer remains in absentia. Is this not what epitomizes being deserted by fortune? Beatrice, right when you have a chance, do you intend to forego the life of your own daughter, I suppose? Headman, in exchange for the village. Glowering at Beatrice, the village headman nailed his fist to the floor, giving rise to a report. The rage and awareness dwelling in his gaze were proof of having compared the scales of his own daughter and the village, and having deliberated earnestly. Henceforth, he had simply chosen his position as the chief of the village over his position as a father. Headman, Tosca was rash in his demands. By all means, please return. Beatrice, blight dragons. Dragons use mountains as dwellings. That remains unchanged, let it be labeled a blight dragon or not. It will settle on the mountain visible in the south of the village, I suppose. The sacrifices won't end with one, in fact. Beatrice, as uncouth as the name suggests, I suppose. Dusting away the hem of her dress, Beatrice chose to excuse herself from the village headman as well. By the very end, as Beatrice was on the brink of exiting, she heard the village headman murmur Remina, yet Beatrice did not hold her steps. However, from her exchange with the village headman and the villagers who shied from showing themselves, she could tell. Beatrice, not everyone, seems to have the mettle to battle the blight dragon, I suppose. By the point of Tosca's arrival at the palace of the witch all by himself, she had foreseen this to a certain extent. Primarily, tackling the palace of the witch was standardly done after forming a clique. Setting about with a group of more than 10, yet the ones to reach the palace were a scant 1 or 2, that was the class of trial it was. Yet, Tosca fulfilled it by himself. That did not allude to the aspect of his exiguous mobile ability and power of will alone, but also portended the negative of isolation. Tosca had no allies. Nobody was seeking to settle matters with the blight dragon. Tosca, I apologize for showing such a pathetic sight to you. Beatrice was being guided to the rear of the shrine, having departed from the village headman's home and followed Puck's responses. There, Tosca bowed and apologized, leaning on the fences enclosing the village. Levitating beside him, Puck hugged his tail with a Puck, was it pathetic? I feel like you're the only one not being pathetic in this village, though. Beatrice, Betty agrees, I suppose. For a human, you're on the better side, in fact. Tosca, haha, that way of putting it would be a bit. Receiving Puck and Beatrice's comfort, a smile recrudesced onto Tosca's expression. Of course a mere bravado, but being cheered up meant being cheered up. Before it dwindled away, they must have the conversation they inevitably ought to. Beatrice, It doesn't seem like there can be any allies found in this village who will assist you in battle, I suppose. Puck, yeah, there's little hope. Seems everyone is so scared of the Blight Dragon that they've shut themselves in. The village was a small and confined one. All within the village must have hearkened Tosca's voice when he roared inside the village headman's home. Yet nobody attempted to come forth, and Remina, isolated within the shrine calling the ritual for purification upon herself, was no exception. Puck, won't you call out to her, Tosca? After having yelled the pinnacle of patheticness just now, gazing at the shrine, Tosca responded to Puck, who tilted his neck. His pessimism was only natural, considering Tosca's remarks shortly earlier. For the childhood friend he wished to rescue, Remina, the one she loved was not him but his elder brother, though judging solely from the hearsay they had learned here and there through the course of their journey, he seemed to be quite the unprecedented sort of personage. Tosca, had Big Brother been over here, we wouldn't have had to worry about Remina becoming a sacrifice for the dragon. I'm sure neither the village headman, nor the folks of the village, would have been afraid of the dragon, Tosca, but, the one over here is me. Me, she thought he would yet again itemize words lamenting his own powerlessness, gaze cast down. However, before the silent Beatrice and Puck, Tosca marked brief words comprising the impetus to look forward by his own volition. Tosca bit his lips, clenched his fists, and mightily, powerfully, gripped the handle of the sword on his hip. Tosca, so what if it's a blight dragon? As if I'm ever going to hand Remina over to just a big lizard like that. Fighting with the dragon is way better than Big Brother's knuckles, Beatrice. That comparison is just weird. In fact, Puck, but, gotta say, he's got quite the boyish expression right there. Whether promising or pathetic, Beatrice slumped her shoulders seeing the way Tosca resolved his determination. Yet Puck seemed to hold a different view, somehow appearing thrilled. Beatrice, well, this is better for Betty than having to lend her strength to a coward, I suppose. She did not spend 9 days and came all the way here in order to watch humans dispute. It was for the havoc enkindled by a dragon its breakthrough, and to prove, the hand of salvation of the Witch of Wisdom sought by humans across the world, its definite might and promise. Beatrice, Betty and Bubby don't have the option to withdraw to begin with. In fact, you will be held accountable for the responsibility of having brought us outside of that palace, I suppose. Tosca, you're truly unsparing, Beatrice-chan. Beatrica, you. MGH. When she attempted to rebuke him that this was no time to interrupt, Tosca's mien intercepted her. An earnest gaze and expression were a show of resolution. If referring to Beatrice so casually coincided with that in exchange, then she could overlook it at least this one time. Beatrice, however, you won't be getting a second chance. In fact, Tosca, I am aware. It seems, we must work out a plan. Had we gotten more allies from the village, we could have charged into the Blight Dragon head-on, but, Puck, you had such a thick-headed strategy. I'd say it's a bit reckless against a dragon. Even Puck was slightly astounded by a policy so erratic and haphazard. Same went for Beatrice, but now was the point in utmost need of wisdom in this time's situation. For Puck's statement, challenging a dragon head-on destitute of other measures was akin to suicide rather than simply being a poor plan. As a matter of course, an ambush was necessary. Beatrice, tomorrow night, what's the arrangement for presenting the sacrifice going to be like, I suppose? Tosca, halfway up the mountain in the south, Remina will be taken there and to the Blight Dragon. Puck, she will get proffered. Betty, think of anything. Beatrice visualized the program for presenting the sacrifice within her mind, a hand positioned onto her chin. Taking a minute to ponder, the conclusion Beatrice subsequently reached was, Beatrice, from your childhood friend's house, bring clothes deeply fragmented with her scent. In fact, upon Beatrice's instruction betraying expectations, Tosca responded as though having forgotten his resentment and restlessness. Tosca, once this ends, would you look at me a bit more instead of Big Brother? Before commencing action, Tosca did not have any exchange with his childhood friend. Simply leaning on the shrine's wall, he unilaterally cast a wish. No answer came to it, and even if it did, Tosca surely did not wish for it to enter his ears. Thus, this was solely a rite necessary for the final push of his resolution. Beatrice and Puck spoke naught, deeming that pointing this out would be boorish as well, and the three mobilized action a night before the full moon, in other words, the very same day. Beatrice, this mountain is a small, shabby, remote one, I suppose. Doesn't seem to be much of a sacred ground either. It's a mystery why a dragon powerful in itself is still making this a part of its turf. In fact, Puck, might be that there's a serious shortage of mountains. From what I heard, there's also dragons who abandoned mountains for dwellings and are staying in castles after driving humans out of them. It's just hijacking at this point. Beatrice, what a savage thing to do, I suppose. They are just lizards with wings after all. In fact, Puck, whoa, go off Betty. Puck voiced a restrained chuckle, the tip of his tail at his mouth. Tickling Puck's scruff, Beatrice moved her body and shifted her hips. Parts of her body stiffened if she were to remain in the same position for long. Beatrice had been crafted by her mother, a witch, but such encumbrances of her body were no different from humans. Neither could she unfasten her body and slip into the mana in the air at will like Puck. The only reorganization permitted to Beatrice was solely the dress and hair comprising her guise. Tosca, I say this again. But you two seem to get along really well, Tosca murmured, somewhat nervously, watching the two siblings frolic from close. Even during the journey, Beatrice and Puck's laughs and teasing did not peter out. Had he been an impatient youngster, he must have indisputably detonated on some point midway through, or perhaps Tosca was able to withstand such circumstances due to personal experience. Beatrice, just as you can see, I suppose. And it looked like a lot of stuff happened with your real brother on your end. In fact, Tosca, not at all. It's just that Big Brother is someone who attracts people's gazes, and I always stood stuck behind him. It's because of that I wasn't able to even get into the sight of the girl I like, that's all. Puck, smells like bittersweet youth. Tosca, youth? I get what you mean by bittersweet though. I wonder if I'm yet immature. Tosca's query as he scratched his cheek made it difficult for Beatrice to answer with a so immature. She was aware of being incomparably more profoundly and richly abound in terms of knowledge than Tosca, but in outline, Tosca stood above Beatrice in terms of true age and years of experience. Besides, she recalled problems in the sphere of love and affection having troubled and distressed even her mother. Beatrice, Betty will anyhow say nothing regarding the relation between you and the childhood friend. Betty also loves Bubby, but it appears it's different from that. Tosca, when you say the two of you are siblings. Puck, when made by the same person using the same technique, I'd say it counts as siblings by that point. Though me staying in that palace with Betty is like a period of preparation before I live independently. Beatrice, live independently. Puck's indifference plunged Beatrice into solitude. One day, Puck will depart from that palace and leave to search for something solely his own. She had heard about that before, and as long as it was concerned with Puck's mission, Beatrice couldn't impede either. For the crafted lives that were artificial spirits, the meaning for being born was the weightiest, most exalted and valuable of all. Tosca, the meaning for being born, is it? Beatrice, you all are different from Betty and Bubby, I suppose. For how short-lived you are, search for it with the utmost of all your might. In fact, tonight, Betty will make time for that, I suppose. Not for a conferred mission, but they must determine the path to walk on, to live on by oneself. It could be that the path remained beyond discovery, and they very much lost their way. Beatrice regarded them, who walked such thorned paths, such unilluminated nights, with commiseration. It was for this reason that the doors of the Palace of the Witch of Wisdom reigned open to those harboring any wishes. Tosca, Beatrice Summer. Beatrice, HMP, still too early for gratitude. In fact, even if you've been overwhelmed with emotion, save it for after everything's been cleaned up, I suppose. Tosca, no, that. Your elbow's touching me and it hurts. Would you mind shifting aside a bit? Beatrice, you really have a serious lack of respect for Betty. In fact, Beatrice yelled, just when she thought what it was that he was about to say with such a meek tone. Tosca expressed a wry smile to her angry remark, but the distance between her and his face was bizarrely close. That was a matter of course. At present, Beatrice and Tosca, along with Puck, were so to speak glued together. They had all gotten inside a single laundry basket, their breaths concealed were in the midst of concealing, fundamentally, utilizing the laundry basket which the sacrifice had been in as camouflage, they shall ambush thereon. That was the entirety of the Blight Dragon extermination operation. Puck, it's simple, but there's no need to make things complex. Betty and I don't have sense like ordinary creatures, so it won't come off as odd even if we're with Tosca. Tosca, when I was told to go steal Remina's clothes, and when I was glutted with cold water, I was beginning to doubt what all you were making me do but. Makes sense, Beatrice, erasing your personal scent and overriding it with the childhood friend's scent instead, I suppose. Women's scents are acute, the dragon will surely get beguiled too. In fact, all they had to do was to await until eventually it negligently drew near in order to ascertain the laundry basket's content. Should they win the minimum of its unpreparedness and opportunity, the rest would then be Beatrice and Puck's stage. Should it come close enough to enter a sword's range, then Tosca's sword strikes would also attain a window. Sooner or later, Tosca, I hold no objections, but the way you phrased that, Puck, now, Betty is thinking in Tosca's best interest. That being said, getting into a laundry basket and awaiting a dragon, not a monster. I feel like there was some folktale like this. Tosca, folktale? Of what kind would that be? Inside of the tightly packed laundry basket, as though averting his eyes from the amplifying insecurity and nervousness, Tosca bit at the chit-chat Puck proposed. Puck, it's pretty similar to our current situation. An evil monster settled beside a certain village, and made a ruckus demanding a sacrifice to be offered. And so, it welcomed not only the sacrifice but also booze and stuff, and when the monster completely fell asleep like a baby they perfectly sliced off its head. Tosca, it would be great if it all were to go so smoothly. The circumstances certainly resembled each other significantly, but the fashion in which Puck narrated it insinuated it to be a fable for children. The wryly smiling Tosca seemed to have reckoned the same. On the other hand, Beatrice wielded a separate impression. Beatrice, Betty does not know of that story, I suppose. Bubby is so well informed. In fact, Puck, it's just a matter of chance. I don't really remember where I heard it from that well either. But isn't it a bit reassuring to think there's been predecessors? If someone had succeeded in monster extermination in an analogous situation, then their plan will surely go well too. Such optimistic views of Puck certainly heartened Beatrice and Tosca. Thereon their dialogue diminished, as they awaited that moment to pay a call. It was a night prior to the originally promised one. They possessed no proof the dragon would come to inspect this laundry basket. However, if this mountain had become the dragon's turf, then it would come to ascertain the foreign object set by its footstep, for that was the attribute of the creatures who placed the world under their reign, called as dragons. Whilst awaiting the dragon's visit, Beatrice incidentally thought that should this first task of hers be wrapped up safely, would her mother even commend her? Puck, if you lend this much of a hand, then it will have gone slightly astray from her policy of self-help endeavors. After all, as though having read through Beatrice's heart, Puck's pinpointing stung sharp to her chest. The witch Echidna who granted wisdom, her policy fundamentally was to present a solution before those who reached the palace and for them to apply it as the problem's resolution by themselves. In a majority of cases, humans sought immediate solutions to problems. However, focusing entirely on reliance they did not wish for growth, and lost sight of means to rescue their own self was her mother's idea. Beatrice endorsed this idea, very much so, and believed normally resolutions must be won by the diligent endeavors of the party concerned. But, Beatrice, this time is an exception, a special case, I suppose. There won't be a second time, in fact. Puck, hope so. Betty, Tosca, followed by a short laugh. Puck's faintly lowered voice called Beatrice and Tosca. The instant they received it, Beatrice and Tosca's nervousness elevated to its topmost. And simultaneously, its arrival was sensed by their instinct before any of the five senses. Since time immemorial, it descended from the skies high above, flapping those potent wings, the monarch of aerial creatures that monopolized the sky, the being fated to be a ruler by birth, its valiant advent, an absolute being that hustled aside every other, whose presence alone jolted the atmosphere. Conjecturing it was immediately close through its pressure and the tremor caused by its stepping foot onto the ground, Beatrice halted her breath. Had Beatrice possessed a beating heart, it must have undoubtedly simmered vehemently like a hot pot verging on exploding upon sensing this existence up close. Through their journey, they had purported them as mere lizards with wings and fools who wallowed in their own strength, and though these had been their genuine beliefs, they were also simultaneously a bluff and part of their unwillingness to admit defeat. They needed to coax themselves into believing dragons were trifling beings, because they knew if they did not do so they would be rendered immobile when meeting the real one. Inside the same laundry basket, Beatrice could hear Tosca's heartbeat. Tosca, cheeks stiff, perspired sweat through his whole body without pause. Status akin to all biological responses of the body except for the heart having simultaneously come to a halt. Prior to dying, the body had commenced conscious preparation for death. She could understand that feeling painfully well. She need not know what the ache of which part would be like. Puck, Betty. In the midst of such delirious entanglement of consciousness, a tender voice connected with Beatrice's earlobe. A quick glance to the side, there present was Puck nestling by her cheekbone. Her tender brother, his black eyes narrowed, inquired Beatrice. Puck, do I do it? The question was one she had been asked countless times throughout this journey, and on every instance of this question, Beatrice presumed upon Puck's heart. Beatrice, thank you, I suppose, Bubby. She mustn't presume upon Puck any more. This was something Beatrice had started, and something Beatrice must fulfill, for this was a trial incumbent to accomplish the mission Beatrice had been born with. And, Beatrice, Minya, accepting the push of resolve, Beatrice chanted. The polished mana meddled with the world, the alteration thus born instantaneously derived results. Light was emitted out the laundry basket and laid a direct hit onto the opponent. Tosca, HK, she felt Tosca gulp a breath, right beside. However, she had not the time to be mindful of his astonishment. She solely bid to decimate the opponent with her all. Beatrice, Minya, 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 materialized with each shout were lethal stakes shimmering in purple brought forth by yin magic. Minya, manifest as purple crystals, they were a category of forbidden curses that froze the target's time, attenuating their existence itself and shattering them an attack before whom no flesh body, no matter how robust or able, held any significance. Dragon scales which not even steel could scathe were no exception, the only options to counter being either to dodge or to be clad in mana firm enough to withstand any intervention of magic. However, negligence lost the dragon of both said options. Beatrice, Minya, Minya, Puck, Betty, calm down. Beatrice, Minya. Minya? 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 Puck, Betty. Beatrice cannonaded magic with undivided attention before Puck clung to her face. Her awareness robbed by the soft sensation, Beatrice returned to composure. She had been attacking toward the gargantuan silhouette before her eyes, entirely absorbed. A disgrace. Should the opponent rebrace its stance and counterattack, her eyes would fail to even spot it. However, Beatrice's such anxieties were nothing more than needless. Puck, it's over, Betty. The dragon isn't moving anymore. Beatrice, Once Puck moved aside from Beatrice's face, her breaths hoarse, her field of vision opened. A beat later, the sound akin to thirsted frosting entered Beatrice's ears as well. And what was reflected in her now opened gaze was the majestic stature of the dragon looking down upon the laundry basket, its height enough to direct gazes upward, at a distance of about 10 meters close. Closely packed scales shrouding its whole body, enormous wings that pirouetted its gargantuan build in the air. Its claws and fangs so fiendishly sharp they could tear into an iron armor like candy, befitting of a species counted as stand-alone cataclysms. However, never again would anyone be tormented by this cataclysm, for the dragon's frame had sustained the stillness of time, having transmuted into purple crystals. Tosca, this, easily. Puck, this is how fights where one side is lying in wait fully prepared go. Striking with the greatest possible strength and crushing the enemy in one go. Betty's plan was the correct answer by far. Summoning the dumbfounded Tosca, Puck gently levitated away from the partly destroyed laundry basket. Going further upward, Puck positioned himself still before the now crystallized dragon, and gently caressed the dragon's muzzle with the tip of his stretched tail. The following moment, crevices formed from the point he caressed and the entire frame of the blight dragon shattered and dissipated. Only glistening fragments remained, for the end of a blight dragon who tormented many, an exceedingly short demise and no other way to describe it. Puck, flawless performance, Betty. Tosca 2, thank you for your hard work. Tosca, I've done nothing. Truly, absolutely nothing. So, both Beatrice and Tosca identically felt how anticlimactic this was. Of course, it was not as though they wished to play a fierce skirmish with the blight dragon. The primary factor jeopardizing the village now gone, they had attained a perfect victory with not as much as a scratch. The results were in fact to an unforeseen extent. Henceforth, they had not been particularly pitched into a state of ecstasy either. Tosca, I've truly done no. Beatrice, without losing heart, you sought salvation from Mother. It can be said however many times, but that is your achievement, in fact. Tosca, Beatrice Summer, insisted Beatrice to Tosca, who failed to escape his astonishment. Beatrice's mind too was steadily, gradually reorganized, giving rise to comprehension that they had safely succeeded in subjugating the blight dragon, and fulfilled Tosca's purpose. Beatrice's mission. For the first time ever since she was born, she exited the palace, embarked on a journey, and killed a living being. That her first kill was a blight dragon was quite the gallant record she had etched in her own history. Beatrice, a weak human depending on wisdom and connection to defeat a strong enemy is not a bad thing, I suppose. However, it's no good to become completely reliant. In fact, don't get carried away and think you'll have another chance hereon, I suppose. To have this presumed upon and be depended upon each time something occurred would run counter to her mother's policy. Neither did Beatrice wish to save a human of such nature, either. Thus, Tosca, I understand. But, thank you very much. Thanks to the two of you, the village, Remina, was saved. Thus, Beatrice deemed Tosca's disposition, this being his answer, to be on the good side for a human. His smile was yet powerless, and needed to digest a lot, which she could sympathize with. Even so, Tosca nonetheless looked forward. Beatrice, well, say your thanks not to Betty but to the proprietor of the palace, Mother, in fact. To the utmost, Betty is only a proxy for Mother, I suppose. Puck, you can never be honest who Betty. Anyhow, it was pretty unexpected. I had braced myself thinking it'd be a bigger, more powerful dragon. Looking down onto the shattered fragments of the dragon, Puck swayed his tail by the point its shattered cranium had been. Upon Puck's words, Beatrice glanced a quick view of the fragments and furrowed her brows. Exactly as Puck's words, it all felt a bit too fast regardless of the ambush's success. The dragon was an individual too, so it was possible this one was a special foe, but, Beatrice, could it be? Yes, the foreboding that urged Beatrice's mind was synchronous with the situation's alteration. Tosca, eyes dilated, frozen motionless, Tosca stepped back whilst looking up to the sky. Following the course of his gape, Beatrice and Puck also comprehended what made him harbor this terror. Ahead was a silhouette calmly airborne in the night sky soaring toward them. Beatrice, it all did seem a bit too easy. In fact, Beatrice reaffirmed, had she possessed a heart it must have been pounding with vehemence once again. A small dragon under its command, the blight dragon who truly placed Mount Karnat's under its reign, a dragon boasting scales of silver. That was what slowly descended before the immobilized three, taking gigantic laps around Mount Karnat's. What steadily descended to take foot before them was a dragon of silver. Prior to the beauty of its scales or remarkable pupils adorned with erudite intellect, came its gargantuan size. If the dragon they had defeated was 10 meters in length, then the one before them now was easily more than thrice its size. Dragons 30 meters huge could only be seen on notably sacred mountains. However, the silver dragon was enshrined before Beatrice and the group's eyes, as a being of reality. Tosca, whoa, a groan escaped Tosca's throat, engulfed into the dragon's majestic dignity and the glint in its eye. He was not the slightest of a coward. Bearing in mind the heroism and valor he had tackled the palace of a nebulous witch for the sake of his childhood friend with, he could forthright be labeled a prominent hero even amongst all of humanity. For the same Tosca, the silver dragon bore overwhelming spirit that mutilated sanity, and sustaining pressure identical to Tosca, Beatrice attained a certain realization. Judging from Tosca's reaction, the dragon before their eyes was none other than the true blight dragon that demanded sacrifice from the village. However, never did Tosca inform them that there were a plurality of dragons. Look to him at the side and it could be understood with ease that he did not know that either multiple dragons, that two of this colossal size, had established a mountain so tiny as their base. The circumstances veiled on the flip side. Their answer was evident. Beatrice, you all had destroying the village as your purpose from the very beginning, I suppose. Thou killed mine brethren, didn't thee, O bawbling ones? The deep, grousing voice of the dragon descended upon them as though ridiculing Beatrice's mutters. Having lived through umpteen years, the dragon in acquisition of intellect could comprehend human speech. To go back on that, the origin of which amongst humans, spirits or dragons first began talking in words would also be something of immense interest. That was how overwhelmingly daunting the silver dragon was, impelling one to rend their thoughts with such escapism. Thou killed mine brethren, didn't thee? O bawbling ones, Beatrice, you're audible loud and clear, no need to repeat yourself, in fact. Your purpose is to, then, we hast only one behest. To exact retribution upon the fallen scales of mine brethren. The silver dragon's voice, abounding in dignity, was chaperoned by profoundness rather than conceiving might. Feeling as not the wind after drenching downpours, but the sensation of plummeting toward a bottomless seabed. Coincidentally, Beatrice realized they had granted it a pretext. The dragon they had initially ambushed had been the opponent's trap itself. Beatrice had given the dragon a reason to take revenge. Amongst dragons existed rare cases who had formed pacts with humans, probing for a path of coexistence. However, should retribution be hailed as a just cause, then even they would make no attempt to readily mediate. She shall straightforwardly admit they got trapped inside a scrupulous scheme. However, she bore a doubt. Beatrice, why do you go so far to target this village, I suppose? Judging by a glance, it's just a remote village with nothing special. In fact, a sacred mountain of no sizable worth, and a village too small to scramble for. Blight dragons who simply enjoyed persecuting the weak were not few, but the silver dragon before their eyes demarcated a line from paltry dragons like those. Upon Beatrice's question, the silver dragon aimed its crystalline golden pupils upon Tosca. It is patent. Destroy that redhead's lineage. Tosca, me, abruptly elevated onto the stage. Tosca was acutely bewildered. The silver dragon's leer directly lanced Tosca. That dragon would not jest. Hence, if so, then the silver dragon's aim lay neither in the village nor in the sacrifice, but in Tosca. Puck, lineage, so precisely Tosca's kin, I'm guessing? I don't really get what it means, though. The silver dragon's glare focused on him. Tosca's breathing plunged into disarray, devoid of any such idea. Puck descended to his shoulder and caressed his cheek in an attempt to calm him, whilst beside them Beatrice embraced identical dubiety. What was there that could grant significance to its aim being Tosca's family? The other day, a mangum of the east hath fallen and weirs of silver dragons splintered in every direction. We too art aware splintered hence upon losing our pillar. Beatrice, a mangum. The one who controls eastern lands, head of silver dragons. It fell, I suppose? Precisely. Beatrice was staggered by the words the silver dragon communicated. Dragons formed weirs throughout the world on all kinds of lands, but they had factions therein, and any representative ones that spearheaded them were famous across the world. The Amangam who controlled the east, which the silver dragon had spoken of, was one who spearheaded one such weir. And, if the downfall of the head of silver dragons was the genesis of Tosca's family being aimed after, Beatrice, could it be? Do you mean that this man's family is involved in the fall of the head of silver dragons? In fact, following the blood, hath reached this land. Nay, that it was a contention of the blight dragon, no, the proud silver dragon, meant this was a deed of conviction. And whilst Beatrice digested this truth, behind her, Tosca lost strength in his legs. Puck still atop his shoulder, Tosca kneeled, stupefied with his eyes fixed onto the ground. Tosca, it's Big Brother, he whispered, his tone one of despair. Puck, Big Brother. You mean that older brother of yours whom you frequently mentioned, Tosca? Catching his utterances, Puck inquired back, to which Tosca nodded. He then moved his lips, quaking in fear, and wrung out a voice pronouncing that's how it's always been. Tosca, always getting into trouble and being a nuisance. At last, just when I thought he arbitrarily left the village, this time he killed the leader of a group of dragons, and they've come to take revenge on me and the village. Why? For what? The fierce elder brother whom Tosca had often brought up. It had seemed as though he had distorted a sense of inferiority in Tosca pertaining to his elder brother, enlarging his idolized image, but it appeared that the matter was not so simple, no, not so complex. Tosca did not doubt that his elder brother killed the head of dragons which even the silver dragon before their eyes obeyed, and much to their dread, neither did the silver dragon repudiate Tosca's ideas. It was simple. Tosca's tellings until now had all been fact, and his elder brother was a monster exceeding norms. For it was that monster who felled the head of silver dragons, Beatrice. As retribution for the fall of their leader, the silver dragons targeted the culprit's family. Truly straightforward and unheeding to appearances, I suppose. The name and reputation of the dragon clan will weep, in fact. Speak per thy liking as long as thou art unacquainted with that being. That being shalt fell all what is nowise human. O spirits, thou art nay exception either. Puck, it's enough to hold dragons in crisis, it's really no matter, we can just laugh off as an exaggeration, you know. Beatrice and Puck, the dragon chimed a warning bell for the two who were spirits as well. Was that how tremendous the might of Tosca's elder brother was? Potency to which even dragons yielded, he may possibly qualify to count as an absolute personage ranking on par with the witches. The feeling of one's heart being daunted before far too inordinate an existence was something Beatrice could empathize with too. Beatrice, but, sad to say, if it is to kneel before someone identically inordinate, then that person has already been decided, I suppose. Regrettable. Hearing Beatrice's caustic remark, the silver dragon honed the glint in its eye, surmising they wouldn't withdraw. Its golden eyes that conceived brimming intellect steadily transformed into ones enveloped in rage and bellicosity. Synchronously the atmosphere quaked, the ground agitated, and rained the premonition of death upon the opposition. Swallowed by the pressure of this silver dragon, before the battle even commenced, Tosca became unable to, Beatrice, stand in fact. Tosca, however, Beatrice's voice powerfully smited the shrunken, unmoving Tosca. Tosca elevated his visage, looking at Beatrice with eyes startled. Beatrice had turned her eyes away from the fearsome silver dragon and was staring in Tosca's direction. The dragon's intimidation piercing the side of her face was dreadful, even inducing the hallucination of her entire body being whittled. But she gnashed her molars and withstood it, glaring at Tosca. Beatrice, voice your wish, I suppose. Tosca. Betty is mother's proxy. The daughter of the witch Echidna, who grants means to fulfill the frantic wishes of humans. In fact, Tosca, I am. Beatrice, now, it is time to fulfill your wish, I suppose. Beatrice held her hand out, pointing towards the silver dragon before their eyes. Beholding this, Tosca gnashed his molars with force. Light rebounded to his blue eyes which had forfeited their strength. Gripping to the handle of the sword by his hip, the youth stood up, his hair so red as to be set ablaze. Tosca, I am going to take Remina as my wife. I've loved her since long before. Beatrice, you, the wish, arg. Even that works at this point in fact. Tosca, I'll protect the village. Even if nobody fights alongside me, they split food with me when I felt hungry. They sheltered me when I cried after Big Brother hit me. I love everyone. Beatrice, more I suppose. Tosca, as if I'm ever going to give up, because of some nuisance Big Brother brought with him. You bloody, damn, shitty little Big Brother. The next time you come back, I'll have you hold your nephews or nieces in your arms. Hollering, Tosca drew the sword from his hip, a tawdry, crudely made sword, nevertheless in these moments shimmered with the hero's spirit. As Tosca braced it straight ahead, by his side Beatrice and Puck exchanged a glance. The opponent was Silver Dragon, a Herculean individual 30 meters in size. Beatrice was a novice who had just experienced killing for the first time a couple of moments ago, a 3-person troop with no coordination or anything. However, through these 9 days, they spent their days and nights together. Their bond, albeit transient and brittle, was definite. Consequently, Tosca, come at us, lizard bastard. I'll turn you into a wedding dinner. Receiving this proclamation, the Silver Dragon lightly widened its eyes, and, Fargle, I, art one who shalt avenge the head of Silver Dragons Fargle. Fargle, though a misdirected retribution, I shalt destroy adversaries of mine family by blood. Blood relative of the fallen head of Silver Dragons, the dragon no. Fargle unfurled its wings. A violent current furiously blew, the shockwave cleaved the earth, swallowing the 3 within. But, the pressure of that gale and tremor immediately vanished. Puck, didn't I tell you that I'm an ally to maidens in love and youthful youngsters? Ahead of Beatrice and Tosca, that which instantly expanded his presence his mass and transfigured his body into one on par with the Silver Dragons, was Puck. Having transformed his adorable outward appearance into a ginormous beast, Puck commanded a view above even the Silver Dragon. Puck, it's just that I'm still practicing it, so I can't make it last for too long. Fargle, spirit. Beatrice, understandable, but you're going to regret it if you fall for Bubby. Thus blew a gale glaciating the world. Amidst the white that chilled even the dragon, Beatrice made her move as well. Purple arrows infinite were knocked in the environs, and the battle of the witch's proxy, the battle of the Silver Dragon subjugation, commenced. Fargle, Gyars. The battle began with a dragon breath, a misapprehension of the world being rocked into mingling within. She had entered the battle after quite the grandstanding, but Beatrice's combat ability was by no means great. Despite abounding in disposition and talent, her lack of experience in real battling shan't turn traitor to victory or defeat. In this battle against the Silver Dragon, Beatrice possessed not a single decisive blow up her sleeve. However, that did not make for Beatrice being luggage unable to battle. Beatrice, El Minya AAHK, lightening the weight of her body, Beatrice fusilladed a hail of purple arrows whilst dancing in the wind. Unlike the dragon taken out in the ambush, Fargle's scales were clad in powerful mana. They impetuously diminished the might of magic, a firm armor that shielded its body. Beatrice's bombardment thwarted by the armor, not even as slight as a single strike connected. However, Puck, higher AAAA, the star-beastified Puck's enormous forelimbs placed a firm hit onto the Silver Dragon's trunk. The dragon in a matter of moments attempted to brace its legs, but the ground below its feet crystallized and shattered. Minya stopped time of not just living creatures. Inorganic substances could be its targets as well. Its brace proving to be fruitless, the Silver Dragon directly received Puck's robust arm. The gargantuan build akin to an amalgamation of multiple gigantic trees was thrown into the air as though weightless, and the blizzard toward that direction intensified. The rampaging wind clad itself in blades of frost and charged towards the Silver Dragon imprisoned therein. The might of the minor tempest was immense. Some offhand dragon would have gotten trapped within the instant it got touched, its body minced to a million shreds. However, the opponent was no offhand dragon. Its pedigree and existence as an individual were all of the highest order. Fargle, Gyars, smashing through the tempest via the current burst upon unfurling its closed wings. The following moment, a heat ray varnished the world in silver. The heat wave released by the Silver Dragon approached Beatrice, killing even sound. No, Beatrice simply happened to be in its trajectory. However, it was sufficient to rob her life in the aftermath. Within that juncture, as Beatrice stood ready for death, Puck swooped in ahead and accepted the heat ray. A groan escaped the depths of his bulky throat before Beatrice instantly clung to the feet of her elder brother. Clinging to his long fur, she cheered her elder brother withstanding this agony with her all. Potentially that bore its fruits. Puck forcefully turned his frame and escaped the heat ray, looking back to Beatrice who grasped his fur and then swung down his gigantic arm. Synchronized with the movement of his arm, multiple house-sized flows of ice drew towards the dragon. The Silver Dragon countered them. Some were repelled by the heat ray, others by the dragon's wings or dragon claws, and attempted to launch a pursuit towards Puck. However, Tosca, arg, flew out. A bloody Tosca, having slipped into the smashed ice floes, amidst the unheeding decisive battle of human and dragon, bearing innumerable wounds throughout his body. Tosca nonetheless did not allow for his fighting spirit to falter and assailed the silver dragon head-on. A silver flash swung, a strike composed of all his might afflicted upon the dragon's bulky, burly neck, a strike of utterly perfect timing and sword technique. What was lacking was defense. Tosca, HK, a shrill note resounded. By the point the edge of his sword was rammed into the dragon's neck, it fractured. Tosca's beloved sword that had supported the battle until now had been a single tread lacking in slashing the silver dragon's scales. As is, the silver dragon narrowed its eyes toward the midair Tosca, now rendered defenseless. The subsequently launched dragon claw was perhaps an attack lacquered with honor and respect toward the warrior. However, no matter what sentiment those claws were imbued with, it meant no change in the consequence they yielded. A singular claw was large enough to rip the body of a human. In but a blink, the existence named Tosca altered into a spray of blood. Fargle, what? In the midst of battle, there existed not even the scope to spin words of significance. This applied to both the dragon and them, yet the dragon's unrest for the first time quaked the atmosphere. Fargle ought to have seized Tosca in the claw strike, and brought his existence to complete ruin. However, Tosca, who ought to have perished, fluttered through the air via fearsome impact, not dead nevertheless. Beatrice, Murak, a hand upraised, Beatrice casted magic towards Tosca the second he was going to be attacked. Not a consequence foreplanned, but the optimum solution complying with the situation derived instinctively. When he was about ensnared in the claws, she made Tosca's body light like fluff, and the wind pressure and impact of the claws escaped him from any fatal wounds. The result, Tosca barely managed to cling to his life. Fargle, regardless, despite eluding it once, the consequence named death was inexorable. In order to prove this, the glint in Fargle's eye arrested the airborne Tosca. Gaping its mouth wide open, the setup to fire a heat ray was completed in the span of a breath. The inferno that scorched the world silver paid no heed to the weight of the target to be scorched to ruin. The tip of this ruin trivialized Tosca. It was on the brink of doing so, when, Tosca, a clamorous voice, not belonging to anyone present here, the voice of someone Beatrice, Puck and even Fargle were unbeknownst of, a voice that solely Tosca, hovering in the air, knew whom it belonged to. Remina. Tosca's lips moved so, as his blue pupils discerned the form of a slender young girl underneath trespassing onto Mount Karnats, now a battlefield. The girl grasped crude steel unbefitting her hands. Holding it aloft, with all her strength, she flung it in Tosca's direction. The whirling object was same as one that had fractured earlier, a tawdry sword. Fargle, however, I shan't allow it to reach. Puck, I wouldn't be so sure. I'm an ally to maidens in love, after all. The silver dragon set to deliver the finishing blow before the sword reached Tosca. Its oral cavity attempted to heave the heat ray, when an impact from below overbearingly shut it close and misdirected its aim. The silver inferno lost of destination exploded within its mouth, and the silver dragon greatly recoiled from the impact, his entire body scorched, smeared in wounds. It was Puck's attack. No, that was not an attack, he simply enlarged by the dragon's feet, a mere vigorless body collision. However, the hero plunged into the priceless interval it nonetheless bore. Tosca, receiving the hurled katana, Tosca dropped towards the silver dragon's direction after having turned his body. Innumerable sword strikes struck the dragon's scales, repelled by their firmness, gouged them, repelled yet again. Repeating this cycle, he resumed to etch a gash. Its flesh and blood gouged, the dragon shrieked. A rigid sound reverberated, the katana snapped from the middle yet again. However, toward Tosca, who lost his sword, Tosca, the voice calling him was accompanied by a successively hailed rain of identically dull katanas. Look there, and stood beside the girl who had hastened to this place, the entire strength of Karnats, with the village headman standing first. In other words, the sum of hurled katanas was 50. Tosca, He caught the katana thrown toward him in his right hand and drove in lethal slashes whilst his left hand caught the next one. Turning his body, each time resounded the echo of shattering steel. Tosca gripped a new sword in his hands and abraded the scales of silver. Born there in a trice was a transcendent swordsman who manipulated swords as extensions of his limbs. Fargal, O kinsman, of red hair, eyes dilated, the silver dragon Fargal aimed at Tosca's build whilst its own was being hashed. The golden eyes until the very end, fumbled for a way to guard the dragon clan. Beatrice, Minya. The purple stakes Beatrice fired pierced the dragon's widened golden pupils from the front. Its eyes unprotected by scales crystallized and vision that renunciated its duty lost sight of Tosca. A silver flash severed the dragon's burly throat till the middle, determining the outcome of battle. Looking down onto the hunched silver dragon, Tosca exhaled a white puff, drenched in blood. Towards Tosca came running the young girl who had first rushed here. She leapt onto him, both collapsing within the dragon's blood together. Beatrice, quite the foolhardiness that girl caused, I suppose. She has him wrapped around her finger, in fact, Puck, could be. Nonetheless, this means love wins in the end. Whilst viewing Tosca and Remina exchange words within a fountain of blood from afar, Beatrice shrugged as a shrunken Puck came to her. The exhaustion that came with undoing star beastification seemed rather intense, his form now about twice as smaller than usual. Beatrice, that's how adorable Bubby is, I suppose. Betty is madly in love at this point. In fact, Puck, though if I'm this small it's trouble in a lot of ways, so I'm quite the troublemaker. Nevertheless. I guess it's all possible. Beatrice quietly assented to Puck's words as he nodded a couple of times. On the other side of the frolicking couple lay a powerlessly collapsed silver dragon, decapitated. A fearsome dragon who truly possessed Herculean strength. Victory would have been beyond their reach had they lacked even a single person on their side. This included the villagers who mustered their courage and hastened here wielding swords midway through. Fargal, splendid, O children of men. Tosca, HK. Stand back, Remina. It can, still talk her. Tosca exercised vigilance toward the possibility of the victory they had caught hold of after crossing a brittle tightrope being jolted. However, Fargal appeared to be on the verge of death even from an outsider's perspective, and was not going to persist for long. The silver dragon had been bested in the struggle for survival, and shall fall without exacting revenge on the enemies of its kin. Beatrice, a wrongly aimed revenge at that, I suppose. It's on you to have pulled an unnecessary stunt and lowered the dragon clan's numbers. In fact, Fargal, certs. It was splendid. However, Beatrice, she thought it would act as a poor loser. However, the dragon shan't do something so low. Then what did it intend? The moment she conceived this doubt, its answer arrived a moment later. Puck, they got us, murmured Puck, looking up to the sky. Lured by his voice, Beatrice raised her countenance as well, and gulped a breath upon witnessing the identical spectacle. It was menace that rivaled the time when Fargal had earlier appeared. No, a spectacle exceeding that. Shouldering the final fragment which the white moon lacked before becoming a full moon, silhouettes drew close whilst flapping their wings. Though their size was not on par with the silver dragon before their eyes, their numbers unveiled despair. Above 10, above 20, above 30, not even 50 but nearly 100 in count, aware of silver dragons. This was the raid of the Were of Dragons who sensed crisis upon the future of the dragon clan after the fall of the head of silver dragons of the East. Beatrice and team, who had just brought out and exhausted their all, couldn't possibly ever oppose them. Puck, what do we do, Betty? Beatrice, only thing possible is for Bubby and Betty to buy time, I suppose. Puck, we might be able to. If in that window Tosca is able to take the villagers. Or in the worst case scenario, just Remina away, would it count as our task being done? Puck's usual attitude before the Were of Dragons close to 100 in count was exceedingly heartening. Following the example of the ever-composed and optimistic stance of her elder brother, Beatrice pressed and ceased her knees from shivering. However, Tosca, please wait. I cannot cause you any more trouble. It was none other than Tosca to impede upon the two's resolve. Making Remina stand, Tosca, his entire build bedaubed in dragon's blood, shoved her in Beatrice's direction and, Tosca, the dragon's aim are Big Brother's relatives. They will never overlook me. If anything, Beatrice, you're telling us to leave you here and escape with a childhood friend and villagers, I suppose. That's absolutely never going to happen. In fact, Tosca, for what reason? You two have no reason to stake your lives here. For the sake of a village they were unassociated with, she staked her life upon a mere request. Tosca bade that he could not comprehend this attitude of Beatrice's, his visage verging onto crying. To his question Beatrice laid a hand on her slim chest, and responded, Beatrice, that is, Betty's role. To devote her all for Mother, that is Betty's mission. Puck, my mission is a bit different from Betty's, but it's for my cute little sister, asserted Beatrice, and beside her spoke Puck with his unchanging attitude. Hearkening the two's response, Tosca widened his eyes and hung his head down for a bit. However, his vacillation amounted to only a couple of seconds. With an unbroken sword in his hand, he positioned himself and stood beside Beatrice. Beatrice, the opponent is aware of 100 dragons, I suppose. Tosca, if it is my sanity that you're questioning, then I have been brain dead after Big Brother hit me in the head since long before. It would be unhinged if I were to run away, when I was the one to start this. He says quite cool things. Beatrice appended a novel evaluation to Tosca's side profile, and as though emulating this spirit of Tosca's, Remina and the villagers turned towards the dragons. People who had once backed down and renounced resistance, now resolved their determination to oppose their hopeless destiny. The human's unyielding stance made Beatrice strongly, powerfully clench her fist. It felt mortifying that the only one present here was her impotent self. Had the one here instead of Beatrice been her mother, been the witch Echidna, then, had her likely distant mother been kind enough to be here, then, Alcerio, Beatrice, a feeble note escaped Beatrice's throat upon hearing the abrupt voice from behind. The chant had neither been Beatrice's, nor Puck's. It was improbable for it to be Tosca, who knew not even the M in magic, nor the powerless humans of the village. That was the chant of one who was au fait with magic, and was utmost informed about it in this world. As though some dream or illusion, Beatrice turned behind, flustered. The sight reflected within her bluish eyes, the one leisurely ambling toward them was an absolute personage wielding pigment of naught but the dual contrasts of white and black. The witch? When I returned to the palace, you two were nowhere to be found beyond having left a parting letter, after all. It just so happened that the dragon of the east was said to have fallen recently, so I was quite worried. Beatrice, your first task seems to have become rather grandiose beyond anticipated. No scope for negligence or interlude. Called by Beatrice's quivering voice, the lady, garbed in black and hair stretching long in white, leisurely halted her gait. Hearing her call, Tosca froze, his eyes dilated. He had knowledge of only one person whom Beatrice referred to as Mother. Tosca, could it be, you are the Witch of Wisdom Summer? Beatrice, yes, in fact. Your head is up, I suppose, human. Prostrate yourself right this instant. Beatrice, eek. Deeming Tosca's bearing as irreverent, Beatrice alerted him whilst correcting her own posture. Her mother's hand placed atop her slender shoulder, Beatrice bewailed upon her touch. However, Mother the witch Echidna faintly loosened her lips. Echidna, you persevered well during my absence. However, I cannot close my eyes to that tone. Beatrice, that was to educate this man. Oh, on what courtesy is. Puck, well, it's all right, Echidna. You also know Betty's a hard worker and has no ill will, yeah? It was Puck who advocated for the humbled Beatrice, seated on her shoulder other than the one Echidna set her hand onto. A carefree exchange, failing to read the air. Tosca insisted with a please wait, his voice brimming with fluster. Tosca, it is a great honor that you came all the way here, Witch Summer. But, the wear of dragons is still. Beatrice, what are you acting so frightened for? In fact, disgraceful. Beatrice glared at Tosca as she snuggled with Puck, his form now the original, adorable one, by her cheek. However, he seemed to not comprehend whatsoever, hastily darting his eyes about. Looking at Beatrice, Puck, and subsequently Echidna, Tosca then gulped his saliva and, Tosca, which summer? What does, Echidna, it's not anything particularly convoluted. The events transpiring are simple, said Echidna with one eye closed, facing about toward the imminent ware of dragons. Lured into her movement, Tosca identically viewed the sky, and took notice. Beatrice and Puck also gazed at the dragons perfusing the sky, and pitied them. Discerning Tosca's brother as a hazard and the stance to resist their downfall was unerring. Yet, Beatrice, it is your greatest misfortune that you went against mother, I suppose. In Beatrice's field of vision as she whispered so, the dragons that perfused the sky finally detected the menace. However, they wouldn't make it in time. By the time they detected it, Echidna's chant, Alcerio, set forth its efficacy and destruction manifested in the world. Alcerio, the force it brought forth was, Fargle, inconceivable. The dying Fargle distended its eyes upon the preposterous scene. Hearing the voice of that silver dragon, Echidna raked her fingers through her white hair. Echidna, should there be any dragons that survive through those falling stars, I shall listen once again. The sky which dragons reigned, from which far, far higher above, descending from beyond was an onslaught of stardust, assailing upon the ware of dragons with velocity and might that rendered any defense or evasion impossible. Within the destruction kindled by stars they were scorched. 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 This was the true end, true ruin brought forth by the absolute personage, the witch. Echidna, going forward, I shall put Carnates under my supervision. If anyone has any objections, let us have a thorough debate. Should that not suffice, you are free to exercise force. Who on earth could defy this ordinance coming from a witch who had dropped stars? The ware of dragons who had advanced towards Carnates intending to bring ruin to Tosca's kin. Much of the dragons, close to 100 in totality, had fallen, with only 4 remaining, one of them being Fargle, injuries healed by Echidna's hand, thus managing to hold onto its life on the brink of perishing. It was the young leader of the ware of silver dragons. The dragons who attempted to fight in order to escape downfall exhibited no purpose of resistance before definite ruin, and hanged the heads of their gargantuan bodies low and pledged an oath to Echidna's words. Fargle, we comply. Dragons born from the eastern sky, shalt not lay a finger upon the redhead's kin again. Echidna, eastern sky, I do feel your attitude in surrendering is somewhat unfavorable, but that cannot be helped. On my behalf, I understand. Young man, what shall you do? Tosca, me? Asked by Echidna, to whom the dragon submitted, Tosca was at a loss for answer. Making the dragon surrender was Echidna's feat, but the one to defeat the mightiest dragon had unequivocally been him. It seemed that had not fully hit him yet, but, Beatrice, don't be so stumped, stand upright. In fact, saving the childhood friend and the village was not your elder brother's but your own deed, I suppose. Your elder brother was instead the main reason behind this impending ruin. In fact, Tosca. Beatrice-chan, Beatrice, why are you saying chan again? I suppose. Beatrice violently stepped on Tosca's foot, feeling she was being made light of. Tosca howled that hurt. Upon the affliction, smiling wryly with tears in his eyes, he subsequently took a deep inhale, slapping his cheeks with his own 2 hands. Tosca, Echidna Summer, I hold no objections either. All I did was try saving my childhood friend. Remina. I do not wish for the dragons to be felled. Echidna, so he says. Rather too kind-hearted for the side who was made to confront imminent ruin without any dialogue or discussion, wouldn't you say? Hearing Tosca's reply, Echidna gazed at the dragons, a single eye closed. The survivor dragons, upon receiving that witch's gaze, bowed to Tosca, his expression now altered. I thank thee. The dragon's brief words marked an intermission to the havoc enkindled by dragons that had assailed upon Carnates. And, now then, let us commence the wedding between the village's hero, Tosca, and the one selected by him, Remina. Hurrah! With the village headman's exuberant greeting, the villagers cheered, each holding a cup of wine. And in the core of the whirlpool of thus arising unbridled enthusiasm, stood the dressed-up duo of Tosca and the young girl. First and foremost, all dressed up meant was Tosca had changed into rough clothes of etiquette, his head now crowned with a festival ornament made out of animal bones. The one truly dolled up was the lovely, sweet young girl beside him, her cheeks slightly tinged Remina. Remina, now garbed in a wedding dress, was originally supposed to have lost her life as sacrifice to the dragon by now. For her fate had been changed, there was no way she had not found happiness. Beatrice, how rich, in fact. Won't go along with humans' merrymaking, I suppose. Puck, really? I'm really fond of auspicious atmospheres and seeing people get drunk and be stupid, though. Beatrice, Bubby's generous outlook is yet far too undoable for Betty. In fact, passing on a slice of meat to Puck atop her shoulder, Beatrice sighed. The oath pledged between Tosca and the dragons became an ever-inviolable covenant, with Echidna being its overseer. Thus, Tosca had truly become a hero, and heroes were rewarded, and the reward he asked for was the young girl beloved to him. As a result, a celebratory banquet was held and Tosca's dearest wish had come true. Beatrice, the girl, was not against it either, I suppose. It was just his overthinking. Viewing everybody's bustling back and forth, Beatrice, however, did not feel appeased. Tosca having Remina as his bride was a respectable reward. However, the villagers attempted to sacrifice Remina without any attempt for resistance against the dragon, did they not? Echidna, a rather joyless expression you have there, Beatrice. Beatrice, Mother. Beside the sullen-faced Beatrice, Echidna gently lowered her hips. Through the course of the feast, there had been an endless number of villagers coming to greet Echidna, who had saved the village in essence. Apprised of words of reverence and gratitude from the villagers, her interactions had now finally arrived at a pause. Beatrice bit her lips upon Echidna's glance, feeling her innermost heart had been peeked into. However, her mother did not press her further. In the end, unable to withstand the silence, Beatrice spoke up. Beatrice, Betty thinks nobody except Tosca has the right to be joyful like this, I suppose. Echidna, their village was saved, and they did not have to lose their family or neighbors. You proclaim they don't have the right to celebrate that felicity? Beatrice, yes, in fact. After all, the one to persevere in the beginning was only Tosca, I suppose. Nobody lent an ear to Tosca's words. Tosca had no allies. In fact, even Tosca must not have chosen the witch all of a sudden among the options he had at first. He must have scrambled for a way to confront the dragon in his own way, consulted the villagers, and even considered taking the childhood friend away from the village. The reason why he nonetheless did not abandon the village was because he was a virtuous human and a coward who could not sacrifice many. If that coward had brought forth the miracle of protecting what he cherished to the end, then, Beatrice, miracles ought to be a reward bestowed upon those who persevered, I suppose. It was to Beatrice's whispers, her expression one of vexation, that Echidna faintly widened her eyes. Echidna's rare surprise eluded notice by Beatrice, who glared down to her own hands. Instead murmured Puck, reward for perseverance. Whilst atop her slender shoulder, Puck, you sure are kind, Betty. That's why you don't like people who persevered and people who didn't, being treated the same way. Beatrice, it might just be pettiness. In fact, Puck, nah, that's not true. Besides, Betty's words just now made me feel I've recalled what I need to do too. Beatrice. Bubby, softly levitating from her shoulder, Puck stretched its tiny build midair. Caught into his remark, Beatrice raised her eyes up to the tiny cat, her shoulders slumped. Upon Beatrice's gaze, Puck laughed whilst caressing his face with a hand. Puck, miracles are rewards for those who worked hard. Then, I've got to work hard too. My stopover has gone on for a bit too long. Beatrice, Echidna. Are you leaving, Puck? Puck and Echidna's dialogue proceeded, deserting the bewildered Beatrice behind. Echidna inquired, her eyes straightened, to which Puck nodded with a MHM. Puck, I have a mission I was born with. Though that doesn't go for me alone, mine's a bit more precise and weighty than others. I'm leaving in order to fulfill that. Echidna, I see. I shall not impede. However, you mustn't act contrary to the contract. Puck, that again? Seriously, that's all you guys are all about. Laughing like a human, Puck then proceeded to descend before Beatrice. Puck gently brushed the bewildered Beatrice's nose with his tail. The sensation swaying her eyelashes, Beatrice vocalized Bubby. And called her brother. Beatrice, Bubby, you're going to go away, I suppose. Puck, sorry, Betty. I'll be parting ways for a bit. But, it's not for always. Once I find what I'm searching for, I'll come back. Even if I don't, I'll look through till every edge of the world then come back. Beatrice, indifferently informed, the feeling of wanting to stop him clogged up to her throat. However, Beatrice was identical to Puck, an artificial spirit. She could empathize to a painful extent with Puck, who wished to fulfill the mission he was born with. Therefore, she could not stop him, born before her elder brother in its truest sense. The only two artificial spirits in this world. Beatrice. Take care of yourself, don't catch a cold. In fact, Puck, you're right, I'll be careful I don't throw my blanket off while sleeping. You too, Betty, get along and don't quarrel with Mother, okay? Waving his tiny hand, Puck elevated himself from Beatrice's frontage up toward the night sky. At the same pace, his form as he swayed his lengthy tail proceeded to diminish. Before long he was engulfed within the night sky and disappeared. In the night embellished with stars, Puck's form was no longer there to be seen, although for an instant she anticipated this to be a joke and he would come back down to her. But, Echidna, so he's gone, huh? It was known that this would happen, but how truly unemotional. Must be to a significant extent if I'm the one saying this. Her mother's words, by her side, repudiated all possibility for this to be a joke. Ever since she had been born, she had spent greater than half of all these months and years alongside her elder brother. Beatrice's heart was scourged with loneliness, desolateness, that Puck was gone. Tosca, huh? Beatrice-chan, where is Puck Summer? Took up any more tasks? Abruptly came today's lead actor Tosca towards Beatrice, whose eyes were cast down in lonesomeness. He restlessly surveyed the environs, and touched on Puck's absence with a sense of dissonance. However, Beatrice firmly shook her head. Beatrice, Bubby is gone, I suppose. For his mission, he embarked on a journey. Tosca, embarked on a journey you say, in the midst of this banquet? There's no way something so bizarre. Tosca, is that true? His cheeks tinted in red, likely due to wine. Tosca froze and distended his eyes. Beatrice did not refute his doubt. Shoulders ducked inward, she nodded. Beatrice, true, I suppose. Well, it cannot be helped, in fact. Bubby has something he must do, and was just on a stopover during his journey, I suppose. So, Tosca, Beatrice-chan, are you fine this way? Beatrice, what do you mean fine? Of course Betty is fine in fact. It's Bubby's duty I suppose. Tosca, but, your expression really says you're about to cry. With this pointed out to her, Beatrice touched her cheek. Fortunately, no tears had flowed, but this gesture alone made for sufficient basis to legitimize Tosca's words. Tosca, Echidna Summer. Echidna Summer, did you not stop him? Echidna, he couldn't have been stopped, you see. Just as this child said, he departed on a journey in order to fulfill his duty. This was a stopover in his journey. The journey's adjournment and resumption are all by his volition. Tosca, but, Beatrice-chan looked so very lonesome. Because she had been with Puck Summer, she had only barely managed to hang on, so, Tosca clung to Echidna, delineating as though having surmised Beatrice's innermost heart and feelings. To this subject Beatrice reddened her cheeks, and stood up. Beatrice, don't go on saying things per your own convenience. In fact, Betty is, all right I suppose. Even if Bubby isn't there. Betty is going strong. In fact, Tosca, Beatrice-chan, Beatrice, Bubby left to fulfill his mission. To work hard and persevere, I suppose. He decided to work hard in order to invoke a miracle, in fact. That cannot be obstructed, I suppose. She shall admit it felt lonely. No lies in that, but someone else's heart could not be judged to be chained using one's own lonesomeness as pretext. Tosca failed to vocalize anything before Beatrice as she averred so, and just looked on at her with eyes abounding compassion. Beatrice attempted to snarl at his gaze right away. Echidna, Beatrice, is it true that you feel lonely? Beatrice, that's, Alri, Echidna, Beatrice, the strength she wished to bluff, was whittled with only a call of her name. Beatrice, it feels lonely, in fact. Mother leaves often, I suppose. It would be trouble should something like today happen again, so Betty knows she must guard your absence, in fact. But, Echidna, I see, I neglected that on my part. You would feel all the more lonely with Puck gone, huh? If that is the case, then perhaps the timing is quite right. Beatrice, right timing? Mother, whatever may that mean, I suppose. Echidna, the other day, I found a child suffering from mana periods. Though a human nobility. I wish for him to learn magic. Thereupon, I intended to have him take lessons in the palace until he's made progress. Beatrice was petrified by her mother's dissonant and, yet again, unconsulted words. Quite the explosive proposal when she reckoned days of lonesomeness would befall with Puck's egress. Mana periods were akin to periods wherein mana that could not be released damaged the body from within. It was a condition that generally occurred only in demi-humans or spirits that utilized massive quantities of mana, but the same could rarely occur with humans blessed with potent talent. Tosca, thank God. That means Beatrice Chan won't be alone, isn't it? Beatrice, TCH, why would you feel relieved? In fact, it has nothing to do with you, I suppose. Tosca, no, I mean, Puck Summer left for his journey with the impetus of my request, and if Beatrice Chan were to become lonely because of that, I wouldn't know how to hold responsibility for it. Beatrice, nobody asked you to hold any responsibility. In fact, whether it be about the elder brother or the dragon, Beatrice was utterly flabbergasted by soft-hearted Tosca's attitude, though it may be precisely because of this tactless honesty of his that he even resolved to fight the dragon with the sole will to protect his childhood friend. Beatrice, keep this up and you'll suffer one day, I suppose. Hereafter you've got someone to protect, so take proper care of yourself and don't act rashly. In fact, Betty is, well, she's all right, I suppose. Tosca, Beatrice Chan. Beatrice, as much as you can, celebrate your short human life and become happy. In fact, Mother's benevolence and protection will magnanimously shelter and shield you all going forward as well, I suppose. Tosca widened his eyes upon Beatrice's words, then subsequently placed himself into a deep kneel. The respectful bow, a gesture of gratitude, was directed not toward Echidna but Beatrice. Beatrice, that respect belongs to Mother. In fact, Tosca, of course, I am also grateful to Echidna Summer. But, you were so kind as to listen to my request in the beginning, and lent not just your wisdom but even your strength. I wish to show gratitude to you, Beatrice. Tosca, it is you who is my savior, Beatrice Chan. One day, for certain, I shall repay this debt. In face of Tosca's terribly humble statement, befitting of identifying as a pledge, Beatrice turned to her mother, to Echidna in search of an answer. However, Echidna did not unveil an answer in her intellectual, black eyes. She solely jerked her chin, telling her to face Tosca. Beatrice deliberated much. It would detriment her image both as the witch Echidna's daughter and as a great spirit to provide an offhand answer here. Therefore, Beatrice focused her gaze directly into Tosca's blue pupils. Beatrice, your vow was certainly heard, I suppose. It shall be placed in some corner of Betty's mind with no expectations set upon it. In fact, you too can brace yourself just to that meager degree, I suppose. Tosca, understood. But, I will repay the debt I've incurred on this day back to you, for certain. Beatrice, you aren't even trying to get it at all. In fact, this is why humans invite trouble, I suppose. So she accepted the youth's vow, his hair an incandescent red, without ever allowing herself to be honest with herself. Several days had passed since the dragon catastrophe of Karnats and the sudden parting with Puck. That day, the palace of the Witch of Wisdom, Echidna, for the first time welcomed a human not possessing a wish to be carried to the witch. Halting the vehicle pulled by grim oxen Pharaoh, a vast amount of baggage by his feet, was a seemingly ill-healthy skinny youth, his hair stretching long in navy blue. Concealing the nervousness of meeting someone for the first time behind a composed visage, Beatrice ascertained the features of the youth who looked toward her that she had been informed of. Long-slitted blue eyes, an orderly countenance. The initial impression of him being ill-healthy did not diminish, but the youth had an expression devoid of anxiety and fear in a world wherein existed extraordinary principles which he set foot upon for the first time. Such was his visage, and upon noticing Beatrice standing there to receive him in the entry hall, the youth respectfully bowed. The carefully conscious etiquette up until his very fingertips was proof of him having received the finest tutelage. The youth aimed his blue eyes directly towards Beatrice, who perceived this, and, today onwards, I shall be under the care of teacher Echidna Summer. My name is Altair Mathers. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Naming himself so, he presented a smile with an expression of cheerfulness that looked up towards the hopes of future Beatrice, and so, thus concludes the bittersweet story of Betty and Bubby. A hand before her chest, Beatrice marked the cessation to a long, long reminiscence. From the very beginning till the very end, Lewis had been experiencing the joys and sorrows of the story. She put a hand on her mouth and timidly glanced toward the side, seeking an answer to the final twist. Lewis, Altair Summer would be, Roswell, it refers to me. In our house, generation after generation, the head of the household succeeds the name Roswell. Before I expelled my parents and siblings, my name had been Altair, Lewis, A.R.I.C. Altair Summer. Dissonantly divulging his name change, Roswell made a nostalgic expression. These events must have occurred multiple years ago, as Beatrice then grimaced. Beatrice, infuriatingly enough, he changed his name right after coming to the palace, I suppose. Back then Betty started doubting what kind of a prank it was. In fact, Roswell, calling it a prank would be quite the exaggeration. Since back then I had been yearning to be useful to teacher as soon as possible, you see. That's why it was necessary for me to be in a position where I could freely utilize my house's authority. The name succession came as a result of that. As one who loved her own, Beatrice could not possibly comprehend being dispassionate regarding one's own name. Above all, that too was significantly because the one to give her this name had been her godparent, her mother, and she believed the same could be said about Roswell. What granted foundation to something's worth was also significantly because of who it was that had given it. Just as Beatrice cherished the name given to her by Echidna, Roswell too surely cherished anything given to him by Echidna without letting go. Lewis, but, listening to this story, I have grown very much fond of Puck Summer. I would love to meet him once as well. Beatrice, HMHM, that's a matter of course, I suppose. Bubby's cuteness and furriness can't be expressed in words. In fact, should you actually see him, it'll be life-changing, I suppose. Lewis, that much so. Gulp, gulping saliva, Lewis nervously imagined the arrival of that time. Watching her spirits, Beatrice pondered she might have uttered something a bit too aggrandized. The girl, who had been visited by a multitude of misfortunes until reaching sanctuary due to her bloodline, could not leave this land for now, because they were in the midst of constructing and acclimatizing a technique connected with the soil and the inhabitants' blood. Lewis, you do not need to worry yourself, Beatrice Summer. Beatrice, MGH. However, her heart was read by none other than Lewis. The girl slowly shook her head, touching her ear slightly lengthier than usual people's. Lewis, there is much that I do not know or have not seen. So, it makes me happy to be told of so many things by Beatrice Summer like this. Beatrice, well, then it's fine. In fact, Betty wasn't bothered by that at all, I suppose. Feeling uneasy, Beatrice averted her gaze. Lewis let out a small laugh seeing Beatrice, with the latter miraculously not being displeased by it. Roswell, at any rate, teacher was magnificent in your story earlier. Who would have thought she would drop stars and repel the wear of dragons? It means even the skies abide by teacher's word. Beatrice, quite the good phrasing in fact. Roswell. No choice but to compliment you for that one, I suppose. Roswell, in terms of words that extol teacher, there's no thing that stands equal with me, after all. Beatrice word to Roswell's phraseology, to which he bowed in a dramatic gesture. Lewis watched over the two's exchange with a pleasant smile. When, Echidna, my goodness. I was wondering what it was that you all were talking about. Beatrice, mother. Roswell, teacher. At the spot where arrangements for supper were being made, Echidna joined them after finishing her business. The Bell Witch, with characteristic black outfit and white hair, closed an eye to the gazes of her beloved daughter and her beloved pupil, Echidna. Talking about Puck is rather rare. That child doesn't show himself off either. I do not believe he perished, but how truly cold-hearted. Beatrice, Bubby must have also entered an age where a lot of stuff becomes problematic. In fact, Betty wouldn't worry about it, I suppose. Putting that aside, it's time for dinner. In fact, Mother, please have a seat beside Betty, I suppose. Roswell, no, teacher, beside me. I had some doubts I wished to ask you regarding Earth 4 just about now as well. Beatrice, that's just an excuse. In fact, to begin with, Mother abandoned writing Earth 4 midway through, so even reading it would amount to just feeling unsure, I suppose. She snarled at Roswell, who took out the book and attempted to draw Echidna's interest with that as pretext. Receiving her words, Roswell shrugged with a my, Roswell, you certainly wouldn't pull such a shambolic stunt when it comes to teacher, at least, yes. If you think it has ended midway through, then doesn't that mean you simply lack the knowledge to imagine what content would be written afterwards? Beatrice, galling, in fact. Quite audacious of you to say this before Betty, I suppose. Roswell, whoa, you wanna go at it? Beatrice, exactly what Betty wishes. In fact, leaping over the book's content, they then jumped to guessing the author, Echidna's intents. The two's quarrel subsequently overheated, and the two finally came down to utilizing force. Away from the bonfire, the two ardently headed toward open ground. Beatrice and Roswell's tussle, it was wholly Beatrice who got heated up, but it was a usual affair for it to aggravate and outburst into a contention of magic. Lewis, Echidna Summer, what should we do? The hot pot will get cold. Echidna, you seem to be more accommodating than what I anticipated as well. I am relieved. I shall keep an eye on those two. Raising her hips, which she had just seated, Echidna proceeded to watch over the dispute between the toilsome two. When Echidna vocalized "that's right" and halted her steps, Echidna, you are having to persist remaining here, but I hope you aren't facing any inconveniences. Beatrice has become quite attached to you as well. Should there be anything you need, I would like to be as open to it as possible, but, Lewis, be by no means. Besides, I enjoy being with Beatrice Summer as well. Echidna, I see. Lewis, please get along with her. Upon a rare request coming from Echidna, Lewis couldn't help but be petrified, eyebrows raised. Consequently, Echidna's figure proceeded to distance away without hearing any answer. Lewis, yes, if I suffice. Kindly allow me to get along with her. Before her figure subsequently dwindled, Lewis cried, erasing her thoughts. Echidna did not halt her gait upon hearing it. She simply waved her hand, slightly, with the alias which came all kinds of hazardous histories and rumors, but by Lewis' word, who was acquainted with the genuine witch, a majority of those baseless rumors were false and groundless. There existed only one thing which she could not refute, that too something superficial, a gauche and kind lady, simply wielding might that transcended human intellect. Lewis, both Beatrice Summer and Roswell Summer love the same person, and yet, although Roswell Summer pokes a bit too much fun at Beatrice Summer, even to an outsider's eye, it was clear as day that Roswell doted on Beatrice. The reason why this was not conveyed to the pivotal Beatrice was because his way of expressing his love was exceedingly childish. Roswell, well, what's the matter, Beatrice? Messing about even when teacher is watching? Beatrice, you. That's it, you've really infuriated Betty now, I suppose. Won't forgive you no matter what, no matter absolutely what. In fact, she could hear the distant voices of the cordial two, frolicking. Lewis' lips unwittingly gave way to a smile, and reckoned Echidna must have conceived an identical emotion. The queer relationships of the sanctuary, relationships that definitely did not comprise family, nor were they not a relationship of benefit. Though not Roswell, she wished for bonds not inferior to the elder brother Beatrice had affectionately spoken of to henceforward be nurtured here and tied together. Whilst musing so, Lewis scooped a bite out of the hot pot with a spoon, and tasted the supper. Lewis, delicious as always. She was excited to see once the contention of magic came to a halt and the three returned, how they shall all react. Roswell, who queerly preferred simple flavors, or Echidna, who did not feel quenched until she had analyzed everything about the particulars of the ingredients used, or Beatrice, who exceeded her bounds and attempted to finish everything served. Experiencing a multitude of meetings and partings, Beatrice shall certainly prevail alongside the witch. Lewis lovingly surmised about the gallant girl that happiness lay ahead of that road. She prayed, wishing for there to be fortune, felicity upon that road.
Loving the days gone by starting from zero, Epilogue, crying voice.
For long, for much too long, this expanse teemed with silence. Everything beyond its time became poison, encompassing even silence. Silence, resounding as a cacophony to ears, was deadly toxic, birthed by stagnation eating into the human heart. Moreover, it steadily, mercilessly and without pardon, ate into even the heart of one not human. Within the tempestuous silence, faintly reverberated the timbre of grazing paper. Atop her petite lap, turning the pages of a voluminous book, her eyes dimly illumined with a fleeting luminescence, chased the letters in pursuit. Only the notes of this reprise jolted the air of the library reigned by silence, the forbidden archive. For long, for too long had this forevermore subsisted when, long eyelashes laced with her eyelids quivered, her blue eyes were elevated lento. Parting her gaze from the book, her sight focused ahead onto the room's gateway in a long time. Her focus about concurred with the door unfastening with a creak. Beatrice, a visitor in a long time, in fact. Roswell too, quite the obstinate chap, I suppose, leaking a languorous, enervated whisper, the proprietor of the room. No, the librarian entrusted with this room by its proprietor, received the first visitor to arrive at the forbidden archive after a span of 10 years with a gelid voice. In days long bygone, she used to await someone's call. However, her duty had since changed. The librarian's role was to await the visit of the awaited one, and a long time had since elapsed, bearing witness to no visit by the awaited one. During this time, a few had succeeded in reaching this forbidden archive, but they all were inapposite to be the awaited one. The same certainly went for this grey-haired grandsire. Beatrice, so? What did you come here searching for, in fact? A means to heal all kinds of illnesses? Art of conversation to amplify your fortune and fame? Or truths concealed in history, I suppose? No matter what it is. Beatrice, what? Interposing in the midst of her speech, she failed to grasp the grandsire's scant words. The librarian thus asked again, and the grandsire, taking a step toward her, pierced her with his blue eyes unabating of radiance. The librarian took an instant and furrowed her brows, gulping a faint inhale. For the possessor of those eyes was, I have come to repay my debt to you. Beatrice, Tosca, the librarian whose name was stated Beatrice, dazed, called the tottering grandsire, the posture of his back bent. This could not be, she thought. However, no refute was evinced by the grandsire, as he loosened his cheeks into a wry smile like once before. During that journey, which lasted shorter than 10 days, this was the expression he used to display the most. Beatrice, I am possible, in fact. After all, it's been more than 100 years since. Tosca, yes, that's correct. This year marks the 150th. Beatrice, you've lived for way too long, I suppose. Be befitting of a human, you should have celebrated your short life, and, words escaping her, Beatrice was astounded by her own faltering speech. By merely this alone, she had surpassed the amount of words he had spoken in the past however many years. But, that was the scale of her astonishment. No, her astonishment was illimitable. What did he say, just now? Beatrice, repay, debt? What in the world does that? Tosca, I heard, you have remained here alone for long. Spending your time in far more solitude than a bit prior to 100 years ago. By a human scale, a calculation error of 30 years is not a bit. She failed to vocalize even this interjection. The aged, tottering grandsire lapped with naught of the youth in Beatrice's recollection, save for his eyes. However, she was astounded by the certitude alone that his eyes had not changed. Beatrice, 100 years, is not a short period, I suppose. Tosca, of course. I I also went through a lot. I had children with Remina, who in turn had their own children, who then also had their own children. Living for long is not something that can be overdone. I did not imagine I would live longer than my great-grandchildren. But, then severing his words, Tosca took another step, walking up to Beatrice. Tosca, thanks to that, I made it in time for today. Beatrice-chan, won't you please leave this place? Beatrice, that's, Tosca, this place is far too lonesome for you to live in by yourself, all alone. Beatrice's heart was staggeringly swayed, witnessing the wrinkled hand offered before her. She had deemed her heart as frozen, having decayed the frailty to be swayed due to the stagnation that prevailed for long, but that had been fallacious. Herself was frail, brittle, akin to leaves swaying in nonchalant wind. Beatrice, be Betty will. Whispering, Beatrice reached not for the offered hand but below her hip. By the footing of the sitting stepladder was a single book veiled by her skirt. Hauling it out in dismay, she ousted the book atop her lap for it and spread it open. Spreading it wide open, frantically attempting to pursue the words that shall hereafter be inscribed, before the blank-paged book void of anything ever recorded therein, Beatrice closed her eyes. Tosca, Beatrice-chan? Beatrice, I cannot, take your hand. No, I will not, in fact. I will not, I suppose. Juddering her head, Beatrice rejected Tosca's hand, senescent over a century. Upon hearing so, Tosca widened his eyes. However, his focus immediately rebounded with AY, identically valorously as the day he had gripped the sword before the dragon. This gallantry of the hero, unchanging despite the elapse of a prolonged period since, seemed dazzling to her. Beatrice, Betty, was entrusted this archive by Mother, in fact. This is an exceedingly important, profoundly significant task, I suppose. Betty can never do something, as to abandon it, in fact. Tosca, but, it's already been over 100 years. Time until someone made children, those children had children, and even their children died. During all this time, you were all alone. Beatrice, this is Betty's mission, I suppose. Betty's meaning, for being born in fact. Taking another step ahead, Tosca attempted to get close to her so that he could reach her hand. Beatrice halted him, with a hand other than the one the book was set atop. His aged legs paused as though his path was weaved closed, and instead upsurged a wind to drive away any parties that threatened the peace of the archive. As the librarian that guarded the forbidden archive, Beatrice, return I suppose, Tosca. Live your last moments surrounded by your children and grandchildren, in fact, Tosca, Beatrice-chan. Beatrice, thank you, for remembering, I suppose. This suffices, as your repayment of the debt. Placing a hand other than the one outstretched onto her chest, Beatrice smiled. Many people apprised her that she was not honest. Everyone saw through Beatrice's sighs, but this time alone did she wish to lie convincingly. In her life of about 140 years, for the first time, Beatrice wished to be a genius at lying. Expelled out of the room, the aged Tosca straggled on the hallway, gazing up to the ceiling. A building precisely identical to the palace of the which he had once seen. However, time had passed, things differed from back then. His self had changed, the world had changed, anything and everything had changed. Tosca, yet, you haven't changed at all since then. His eyes moistening from vexation, the grandsire clenched the overlong thirst of his cheeks with tears. How long had it been since he had cried like this? Never could he forget. He had previously cried when he heard of his elder brother's demise. The man who cried not even when he bid farewell to his wife, his children, his grandchildren, now let fall tears he could not reach. His self was insufficient. Was he too late? Or was he too early? Purely, his self had not been the one. He could not become her kind self's awaited one. Tosca, someone, anyone. No, the one who was utmost kind in the entire world. Someone, please save that kind-hearted girl. Please, bury the solitude she had lived. If this is the palace of the witch reconstructed, and if she is the proxy of the witch, I shall wish until my heart scorches. Tosca, someone, please save her. She is my savior. At the end of his life, The grandsire wept. Wishing for her happiness, he kept crying, he kept on crying, ? No good, huh? The silhouette watching the grandsire shed tears from the corner of the hallway, sighed so. One glance at his state was enough to discern his failure. Having hoped that if it's him, then he might be able to take the girl out of the forbidden archive, but it all fell in vain. Reminiscences dating prior to 130 years ago, might have been too slender a thread to rely on. Knocking the temple of his forehead with a finger, he recalled the olden, faraway, distant days, having swapped bodies thrice now, hence had increased memories he could no longer recollect. However, those days in the sanctuary shan't grow dim. Never could he forget either his emotions or his regrets. However, that was his personal circumstance. He could not possibly let her get involved within, he believed. But, Beatrice, you will also uphold your promise with teacher, yes. The black books left by the witch to the two of daughter and pupil, that book which indicated its owner's future, was the solitary possibility for him, and befittingly his guide to a demonic conclusion. In order to realize his purpose, it was necessary for him to renounce being human. Therefore, his self renounced being human, and initiated deeds with the resignation of falling into the pits of hell. However, at least before that, he wished to keep solely one person, solely her, away in safety, but, ? Not everything goes well, isn't it, teacher? At least, the future that shall fittingly arrive, those final moments, for her to welcome them with full contentment, I pray. The witch, who continued to grant the wishes of people, her pupil enunciated a prayer. Upon the fair cheeks to offer this prayer, his wish trickled down in the shape of a singular warm droplet. The grandsire, who tied together an old bond, and a kindred soul who relinquished his body to the clownery of fate, shed tears. Unbeknownst of such happenings beyond the doors closed, Beatrice slowly lowered her hand. The book atop her knees was an unchanging white, indicating naught of her future. Beatrice, but, one day for sure, one day for certain, one day for absolute, will arrive the time letters shall be scrawled upon these blank, white pages. They whom her mother told her to await, shall arrive seeking the knowledge of the archive entrusted to her by her mother, before the spirit whose mission was to devote her all for her mother. Beatrice, mother, Bobby, Juice, Tosca, Roswell, Lewis. Amidst the days she lived for long, she whispered the names possessing magnitude within her heart. Ache constricted her chest upon the whisper of a single name. Hugging the girthy black book into the same chest, the girl cast her gaze down. Someone cool would be nice. Knowledgeable, well-educated, elegant in conduct. A master in all kinds of martial arts upon wielding a sword, someone who rumbled heaven and earth upon using magic. It'd be nice if a superhuman like that were to be they. And, if that was over-ambitious, then, Beatrice, I'd be happy, if it were to be someone kind. In fact, one day, if there were to be someone who opened these doors and took her hand, then she wished for it to be someone kind. Whilst wishing so, Beatrice faintly wailed, and cried all to herself,